The night Victoria Hale's billion-dollar life shattered, she whispered 4 words to a complete stranger that would destroy everything she'd built and save the one thing she'd lost. This is the story of a single father who became the only witness to a CEO's secret unraveling, and the dangerous choice that pulled them both into a storm neither could survive alone. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and let's dive in. The Scottsdale Grande Resort didn't just host charity galas, it performed them. Every surface gleamed, every smile had been rehearsed. The kind of event where champagne flutes caught the light just right, where orchestras played at volumes designed not to interrupt conversation, and where a single ticket cost more than most people earned in a month. It was the sort of gathering that existed to remind Phoenix's elite exactly who they were, and who everyone else wasn't. Lucas Reed didn't belong there. He knew it the moment he stepped through the gold-trimmed doors, tugging at the collar of a suit he'd bought on sale 3 years ago for a job interview that never panned out. His invitation had come through work. A pity ticket, really, from his boss at the marketing firm who couldn't attend and figured Lucas might network. Translation: stand in a corner, drink 1 beer, and leave early enough to relieve the babysitter before the hourly rate doubled. He'd almost said no. Almost stayed home with Mia, his 7-year-old daughter, to watch Encanto for the 47th time, while she sang every word and he pretended his eyes weren't closing. But Mrs. Alvarez next door had insisted, "You need to get out, mijo. You're not a monk." And somehow Lucas found himself here, nursing a gin and tonic he didn't want, surrounded by people whose problems came with stock options and offshore accounts. The ballroom sprawled before him like a stage set. 200 guests mingled beneath chandeliers the size of compact cars. A jazz quartet occupied one corner, their music smooth and forgettable. Waiters glided between clusters of conversation, replacing empty glasses before anyone noticed they were empty. Laughter rolled across the room in waves, performative, careful, the kind that never got too loud. Lucas checked his phone. 9:47 p.m. Mia's bedtime had come and gone. Mrs. Alvarez had texted a photo, his daughter asleep on the couch, still in her princess dress from earlier, 1 sock on, 1 sock missing. His chest tightened with the particular guilt only single parents understood, the constant calculation of whether he was doing enough, being enough, present enough. He should leave. He'd made an appearance. That was enough. But something stopped him. A flicker of movement near the far windows, barely visible through the crowd. A woman stood alone at the edge of the terrace, separated from the party by a wall of glass and what looked like an ocean of deliberate distance. She wore a dress that probably cost more than his car. Midnight blue, perfectly tailored, the kind of elegant that didn't shout but didn't need to. Her posture was immaculate, shoulders back, chin level, hands clasped loosely at her waist. Everything about her screamed control, except her eyes. Lucas couldn't see them clearly from across the room, but he recognized the expression. He'd seen it in the mirror often enough during those first months after Sarah left, after the divorce papers arrived, after he'd become the sole everything for a 6-year-old who kept asking when mommy was coming home. It was the look of someone holding together by force of will alone, a dam with hairline fractures spreading beneath the surface. The woman turned slightly, and recognition hit him like cold water. Victoria Hale. Even Lucas, who barely followed business news, knew that face. It had been on magazine covers, TED Talk stages, the Forbes billionaire list. Self-made CEO of Hale Innovations, a tech empire built from nothing into something that employed 30,000 people across 4 continents. The American dream wrapped in Louboutins and a reputation for ruthless brilliance. She'd been the keynote speaker tonight. He'd missed her speech, arriving late after Mia's soccer practice ran over, but the program listed her as the event's honorary chair, and she looked utterly, completely alone. Lucas watched as a man approached her, older, silver-haired, expensive suit that fit like it had been born on him. He leaned in close, said something with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Victoria's posture somehow became even more rigid. She nodded. The man's hand settled on her lower back, proprietary. And Lucas saw her flinch, so slight that if he'd blinked, he would have missed it. The man walked away. Victoria's hands unclenched, then clenched again, tighter. Lucas found himself moving before he'd decided to move. His feet carried him across the ballroom floor, weaving between conversations about market volatility and vacation homes in Aspen. He had no plan, no idea what he was doing. Maybe it was the gin and tonic on an empty stomach. Maybe it was recognizing something broken in someone else and remembering what it felt like when no one noticed you were drowning. Maybe he was just tired of watching people suffer in silence. He reached the terrace doors as Victoria stepped outside. The night air hit him, cool for Arizona in October, carrying the scent of desert sage and chlorine from the resort pools below. She stood at the railing, looking out over Scottsdale's glittering sprawl, city lights spreading toward dark mountains on the horizon. "Excuse me," Lucas said quietly, staying several feet back. "Are you okay?" It was possibly the stupidest question he'd ever asked. Of course she wasn't okay. But he'd also learned, in the hardest year of his life, that sometimes the stupidest questions were the only honest ones left. Victoria didn't turn. "I'm fine. Thank you." Her voice was steady, professional. The voice of someone who'd given 1,000 interviews and never said a true thing in any of them. Lucas should have walked away, should have taken the polite dismissal and returned to his corner of the ballroom. Instead, he heard himself say, "You don't look fine." Now she turned. Up close, the cracks were more visible. Makeup just barely concealing the shadows beneath her eyes, a tightness around her mouth that spoke of smiles held too long. She was probably 40, maybe 45, beautiful in the way that came from excellent genetics and better discipline. But there was something else there too, something that made Lucas think of caged birds and locked doors. "Do I know you?" she asked, and there was no hostility in it, just genuine confusion. "No, I'm nobody. Lucas Reed, I work in marketing. Got a ticket through my boss. He stopped himself before saying, "I'm just leaving," because suddenly he wasn't sure that was true anymore. "I'm someone who recognizes that expression." What expression? The one that says you're about 30 seconds from either screaming or falling apart, and you're not sure which one's going to win. The words landed between them like stones dropped in still water. For a long moment, Victoria just stared at him. Lucas braced for anger, for dismissal, for security to be called. This was Victoria Hale, for Christ's sake. You didn't just walk up to billionaires and tell them they looked like they were breaking. But then something shifted in her face. The mask slipped, just for a heartbeat, and what Lucas saw underneath made his breath catch. Not fragility, but exhaustion so profound it had weight. "Please," Victoria whispered, and her voice cracked on the word. "Please, take me somewhere private." Lucas's entire world tilted sideways. "What?" "Anywhere. Just not here. Not—" She glanced back through the glass doors at the glittering ballroom, the beautiful people, the carefully constructed perfection. "I can't breathe in there. I haven't been able to breathe in years." There were 1,000 reasons to say no. Lucas didn't know this woman. She was famous, powerful, probably had security watching her right now. He had a daughter at home, a job that barely covered rent, a life that couldn't afford complications. And yet he recognized the desperation in her voice, the kind that came from being so deeply, utterly trapped that you'd ask a stranger for rescue simply because a stranger was the only person who might not already be part of the trap. "My car's in the lot," Lucas heard himself say. "But I should tell you, it's a 2012 Honda Civic with a car seat in the back and French fries in the cup holders." The smallest smile touched Victoria's lips. "That sounds perfect." They moved quickly, quietly, through a side exit Lucas hadn't known existed until Victoria led him there. She walked like someone who'd memorized every escape route, her heels clicking against marble with purpose. No one stopped them. No one even looked their way. Lucas realized she'd probably timed this, waited for the moment when eyes were elsewhere, attention divided. This wasn't impulse. This was calculation born from desperation. His Civic sat in the far corner of the parking lot, exactly where he'd left it, looking even more pathetic surrounded by Mercedes and Teslas, and cars he couldn't name but knew cost more than his annual salary. Lucas unlocked it, swept Mia's art supplies off the passenger seat, crayons scattering across the floorboard, and held the door open. Victoria slid in without hesitation, without disgust, without any of the reaction he'd expected. She pulled the door closed, kicked off her heels, and let her head fall back against the headrest. Drive, she said. Please. Anywhere. Lucas got behind the wheel. His hands shook slightly as he started the engine, the same nervous tremor that appeared during job interviews and parent-teacher conferences. He pulled out of the lot, past the valets who didn't even glance at the old Honda, onto Scottsdale Road heading south into the desert night. They drove in silence for 10 minutes. Lucas kept stealing glances at his passenger, half convinced she'd disappeared, that this whole thing was some stress-induced hallucination. But Victoria Hale remained solid and real in his peripheral vision, staring out the window at passing streetlights, her fingers twisted together in her lap. There's a place, Lucas finally said. Small jazz club in Tempe. Friend of mine plays piano there sometimes. It's quiet, private. Nobody who goes there reads Forbes. Yes. Victoria's voice was barely audible. Yes, please. The Blue Note Lounge occupied a converted house off Mill Avenue, the kind of venue that survived on love of music rather than profit margin. Lucas had discovered it 2 years ago during one of his rare nights away from single-parent duty, drawn in by saxophone music drifting through an open door. It had become his sanctuary, a place where he could sit in the dark, drink cheap whiskey, and remember he was more than just dad, more than just the guy who forgot to pack Mia's lunch and showed up to school events alone while other parents whispered. He parked in the small lot behind the building. The club's back entrance was unmarked, just a red door with peeling paint. Music leaked out. Slow, melancholy, beautiful. Lucas glanced at Victoria. Last chance to change your mind. We can go anywhere else. Or I can take you back. No. She opened her door. This is perfect. Inside, the Blue Note wrapped around them like a cocoon. 20 small tables scattered across a dim room, most of them empty on a Thursday night. The stage held a trio, piano, bass, upright drums, playing something slow and old that Lucas almost recognized. The bartender, Marcus, raised a hand in greeting but didn't call out. This was that kind of place. Lucas led Victoria to a corner booth, the darkest spot in the room. She slid into the shadows with visible relief, her perfect posture finally relaxing, shoulders dropping several inches. For the first time since he'd seen her on that terrace, she looked like she could breathe. Marcus appeared with 2 glasses of water and a knowing look. The usual, Lucas? Yeah, thanks. Lucas turned to Victoria. What do you drink? I don't care. She laughed, a strange, fractured sound. Whatever you're having. 2 whiskeys. Neat. Marcus disappeared. The piano player shifted into a new song, Coltrane maybe, something with enough space between the notes to think. Victoria pulled her phone from her clutch, stared at the screen, 17 missed calls, 43 unread messages, and powered it off completely. They'll be looking for me, she said quietly. My husband. My assistant. Security. They're probably already panicking. Do you want me to take you back? No. The word came out fierce. No, I want... She stopped, closed her eyes. I don't know what I want. That's the problem. I haven't known in so long that I've forgotten what wanting feels like. Marcus returned with their drinks. Lucas waited until he'd gone, then pushed one glass toward Victoria. She picked it up, studied the amber liquid, then downed half of it in one swallow. Lucas raised his eyebrows. Sorry, Victoria said. Was that not elegant enough? I don't care about elegant. Are you okay? Why do you keep asking me that? You don't even know me. Because you asked a stranger to kidnap you from a charity gala, and now you're sitting in a dive bar drinking whiskey like it's medicine. That's not normal billionaire behavior. Victoria laughed again, and this time it sounded more real. What do you know about billionaire behavior? Absolutely nothing, but I know scared when I see it, and you're scared. The laughter died. Victoria stared into her glass, watching light catch the whiskey's surface. On stage, the piano player's hands moved across the keys with the kind of grace that came from 10,000 hours of practice, finding beauty in the spaces between notes. Tell me something about yourself, Victoria said suddenly. Something real. Something that has nothing to do with networking or business or any of this. She gestured vaguely at herself, at her expensive dress and the life it represented. I want to talk to someone who doesn't want anything from me. Lucas considered the request. When was the last time anyone asked him about himself without it being a transaction? Job interviews, first dates that never led to second dates, concerned teachers wondering why he kept missing school events. "I have a daughter," he said. "Mia, she's 7, obsessed with dinosaurs and refuses to wear matching socks. Her favorite food is chicken nuggets shaped like dinosaurs, which I'm pretty sure is just regular chicken nuggets with marketing. I became a single dad 2 years ago when my ex-wife decided she wanted a different life, one without the responsibility of a kid slowing her down. So now it's just us. I work 40 hours a week doing marketing for a solar panel company I don't care about, drive a car held together by duct tape and prayer, and most nights I fall asleep on the couch during Frozen 2 because Mia insists we watch it together and I can't say no to her. That's my life. It's small, it's ordinary, and some days it feels like I'm drowning in it." He stopped, surprised by his own honesty. He'd just trauma dumped on a billionaire he'd met 30 minutes ago. Smooth. But Victoria wasn't looking at him like he was pathetic. She was looking at him like he'd just spoken a language she'd forgotten existed. "That sounds beautiful," she said softly. "It's exhausting." "It's real," Victoria finished her whiskey. "Do you know what my life looks like? From the outside, I mean. What people see. Magazine covers, TED Talks, self-made billionaire, inspiration to women everywhere. Yes, all of that, the American dream." Her voice turned bitter. "And do you know what nobody sees? Nobody asks? What happens behind the curtain? Tell me." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the table. The music swelled and receded around them, creating a pocket of privacy in the public space. When she finally spoke, her voice was so low Lucas had to lean forward to hear. "I met my husband when I was 26. Richard Hale, investment banker, old money, the kind of pedigree that comes with Roman numerals after your name. I was nobody. A programmer working 80-hour weeks, building a small software company in my apartment. He saw potential in me, invested in my company, taught me how to navigate the world of real money, real power. We got married 6 months later. I thought I was lucky. I thought I'd found a partner." She paused, swallowed, continued. Richard didn't want a partner. He wanted a project, something he could shape, control, perfect. At first it was subtle, suggestions about my appearance, my presentation style, which meetings to take, which opportunities to decline. He said he was helping me, protecting me from mistakes, and maybe he was. My company exploded under his guidance. 5 years after we married, I was a billionaire. Forbes cover, the whole thing. "But," Lucas prompted gently, "but somewhere along the way I stopped being Victoria. I became Victoria Hale, a brand he'd crafted. Every speech vetted by his team, every outfit chosen to project the right image. Every friend, every employee, every decision filtered through what Richard determined was appropriate. He never yelled, never hit me, never did anything you could point to and call abuse. He just quietly eliminated every version of me that didn't fit his vision." Victoria's hands were shaking now. Lucas reached across the table, covered them with his own. She startled at the contact, then held on like she was drowning. "I haven't made a real choice in 14 years, she whispered. "What to wear, what to eat, who to talk to, where to go. It's all managed, controlled, optimized. Tonight, that gala. I was supposed to give a speech Richard wrote, smile at people Richard selected, leave at the exact time Richard specified. Every minute of my life is scheduled 6 months in advance. And the worst part? Everyone thinks I'm powerful. Everyone thinks I'm in control. But I'm the most trapped person in every room I enter." Tears streaked her makeup now, cutting paths through expensive foundation. Lucas tightened his grip on her hands. "Why tonight?" he asked. "What changed?" Victoria laughed, a broken, desperate sound. "This afternoon, Richard informed me that we're having a baby. Not trying for a baby. Having one. He's already selected the surrogate, arranged the contracts, chosen the nursery designer. He said it's time to complete our image as the perfect power couple. He's made the decision, so it's done. And I realized, if I don't leave now, I never will. If I let him add a child to this cage, I'll never get out." The full weight of what she was saying settled between them. Lucas thought of Mia, of the fierce love and terror that came with being responsible for another human life. The idea of that being used as another tool of control made his stomach turn. "You have to leave him," Lucas said. I know. Tonight. Now. There are resources, shelters, lawyers who specialize in... Lucas? Victoria pulled her hands back gently. "I'm a billionaire. I don't need a shelter. I need courage. And I haven't had any in so long I don't remember what it feels like. You had the courage to ask me to get you out of there. I asked a stranger to drive me to a bar. That's not courage. That's desperation with car service. It's a start." Victoria met his eyes, and for the first time since they'd met, Lucas saw something other than fear or exhaustion. He saw the woman who'd built $1 billion company from nothing, the intelligence, the strength, the steel spine that tabloids loved to celebrate. She'd been there all along, just buried under 14 years of someone else's control. "Tell me about Mia," Victoria said suddenly, changing the subject with the abruptness of someone who'd hit her emotional limit. "What's her favorite dinosaur?" Lucas smiled, grateful for the reprieve. "Parasaurolophus. Can't pronounce it, absolutely obsessed with it. We went to the Natural History Museum last month, and she spent 2 hours in front of the one display asking questions the poor volunteer guide couldn't answer. I had to promise we'd watch every dinosaur documentary in existence." "And have you?" "We're working through them, currently stuck on Planet Dinosaur. She acts out the scenes during dinner. Last night, I was an Allosaurus getting eaten by a Saurophagonex. It was very dramatic." Victoria's smile was real now, reaching her eyes. "She sounds extraordinary." "She is. She's everything, which is why..." Lucas stopped himself, but Victoria caught it. "Why what?" "Why I can't understand how your husband could see a child as anything other than a gift. My ex-wife left because she didn't want the responsibility. And Richard wants one as an accessory. Both of them are missing the whole point." "What's the point?" Lucas thought of Mia's laugh, her sticky hands grabbing his face to tell him something important about dinosaur biology, the way she still climbed into his bed during thunderstorms, even though she insisted she was too old for that. "The point is that you're not in control. Not really. You're just there, trying your best, hoping you don't screw them up too badly. And somehow that complete lack of control is the most important thing you'll ever do." "That's beautiful," Victoria said quietly. "It's terrifying." "Maybe that's the same thing." They talked for another hour, about nothing, about everything. Victoria asked about Mia's school, her friends, her favorite books. Lucas asked about the early days of Victoria's company, before Richard, when it was just her and a laptop and an idea. She told him about the first time she'd secured venture capital, how she'd been so nervous she'd thrown up in the bathroom before the meeting. He told her about Mia's birth, how he'd passed out in the delivery room and woken up to his daughter already in the world, looking at him like he was the most important person alive. For those 60 minutes, they weren't a billionaire and a single dad. They were just two people who'd forgotten what it felt like to talk without performing, to exist without a script. Marcus brought them coffee as the club started to empty out. The piano player packed up his instrument, nodded goodnight to the handful of remaining patrons. The clock behind the bar read 12:47 a.m. "I should get home," Lucas said reluctantly. "Mrs. Alvarez is probably asleep on my couch by now, and I'm going to owe her a week of her favorite tamales." Victoria nodded but didn't move. "Thank you. For tonight. For listening. For not treating me like a headline. Thank you for trusting me, even though that was probably a terrible decision on your part." "The best decisions usually are." They stood, the spell of the evening breaking slowly. Lucas paid their tab, Marcus waved away Victoria's attempt to contribute, and they walked back out into the parking lot. The desert night had cooled further, stars visible despite the city's light pollution. Lucas unlocked the Civic, but before Victoria could get in, she turned to him. "I'm going to do it," she said. "Leave him. I don't know how yet, don't know when, but tonight reminded me who I was before I became someone else's creation, and I want her back." "If you need anything," Lucas started, then stopped. What could he possibly offer a billionaire? "That's stupid. You don't need anything from me. I need you to believe I can do this. That's not nothing." I believe you. Why? Lucas thought about that. Because you asked for help. People who are really trapped convince themselves they're fine. You asked a stranger to get you out. That takes more strength than most people will ever need. Victoria kissed his cheek. Quick, surprising, warm. You're a good man, Lucas Reed. Your daughter is lucky. I'm the lucky one. Lucas drove her back toward Scottsdale, following her directions to a private entrance of the resort where her car was waiting. A black Mercedes SUV with tinted windows, security standing nearby pretending not to watch. The prison, in luxury form. Victoria paused before getting out. Will I see you again? She asked. Lucas should have said no, should have recognized this for what it was. A moment outside of time, a brief intersection of two lives that would diverge in the morning. She had billions and an empire. He had a daughter and a Honda Civic. Their worlds didn't overlap. But he found himself saying, I hope so. Victoria smiled, sad, knowing, real. Me too. She stepped out of the car. The security guard opened the Mercedes door, his face carefully neutral. Victoria slid into the leather interior, into the life she'd been born into and built, and was now trapped by. The door closed. The Mercedes pulled away. And Lucas sat in his Civic, watching taillights disappear into the desert night, wondering if he'd just witnessed the beginning of someone's liberation or the last time Victoria Hale would ever ask for help. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Alvarez. Mija fell asleep waiting for you. She wants pancakes tomorrow. Drive safe. Lucas put the car in gear and headed home to his daughter, his ordinary life, his small corner of the world. But something had shifted in him. For the first time in 2 years since becoming a single father and measuring his life in school pickups and bedtime routines, he'd been reminded that everyone was fighting invisible battles. That loneliness could exist in penthouses just as easily as studio apartments. That sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was simply show up for another human being. He didn't know if he'd ever see Victoria Hale again. But 3 days later, when his phone rang from an unknown number and a familiar voice said, Lucas, I need your help. He knows I'm planning to leave. Lucas realized their story wasn't ending. It was just beginning, and this time the stakes were about to get a lot more dangerous. The call came at 2:34 a.m. on a Sunday morning, 3 days after Lucas had dropped Victoria back at the resort and driven home wondering if he'd imagined the entire evening. He'd almost convinced himself it had been some kind of stress-induced fever dream, the kind of thing that happened when single fathers got exactly 3 hours of sleep and survived on coffee and chicken nuggets. But the number on his phone screen was real. Unknown, but real. Lucas grabbed it before the second ring, stumbling out of bed and into the hallway so he wouldn't wake Mia. His heart was already racing, the way it did when midnight calls came. Never good news. Never something that could wait until morning. Hello? Lucas? I need your help. Victoria's voice cracked with barely controlled panic. He knows I'm planning to leave. Lucas pressed his back against the hallway wall, his mind snapping into focus despite the hour. What happened? Are you safe? I don't know. I think so. I'm in my office at home. He's asleep upstairs, but Lucas, I'm scared. I've never been this scared. Tell me what happened. He heard her breathing, quick and shallow, the sound of someone trying not to fall apart. In the background, nothing, just silence, the kind that came from houses too large to feel like homes. This afternoon, Richard asked me about Thursday night, asked where I'd gone, who I'd spoken to. I told him I'd felt ill and stepped outside for air. He smiled at me, that smile he uses when he knows I'm lying but wants me to know he's allowing it. Then he said, We both know you weren't alone, Victoria. We both know someone drove you away from the event. Lucas's stomach dropped. How does he know? Security cameras, private investigators. Richard doesn't leave things to chance. He probably has my location tracked on my phone, access to all my accounts, people watching me who I don't even know exist. I've been so careful, so quiet about researching divorce lawyers, but I must have slipped somewhere. He's always 3 steps ahead. What did you tell him? Nothing. I said I didn't know what he was talking about. He let it go, or pretended to. But tonight I found divorce papers in my office. Not papers I'd filed, papers he'd prepared, Preemptive divorce on his terms, claiming infidelity, citing a deteriorating mental state. There's documentation, doctor's visits I don't remember, medications I've never taken, concerning behavior reported by staff. He's been building a case against me, Lucas. For how long? I don't know. But if I try to leave on my own terms, he's ready to destroy me. Lucas felt rage building in his chest, hot and unfamiliar. He thought of Mia, of how fiercely he'd protect her from anyone who tried to control or manipulate her future. Victoria was twice his age and 1,000 times more successful. But in that moment, she was just someone being hunted by a person who'd promised to love her. You need to call a lawyer. Tonight. Now. There are people who specialize in this who can... I have lawyers, Lucas, the best money can buy. But there are lawyers. Richard hired most of them, pays their retainers, has relationships going back decades. I don't know who I can trust. Everyone in my life has been vetted by him, approved by him, sometimes hired by him. My assistant, my driver, my personal trainer, how many of them report back to Richard? How many of them would choose his money over my freedom? Then find new lawyers. Someone he doesn't know, someone outside his circle. I'm trying. But every move I make leaves a trail. Every call could be monitored. Every meeting could be reported back. I feel like I'm trying to plan an escape while the guards watch my every move. Lucas ran his free hand through his hair, pacing the narrow hallway. Mia's bedroom door was cracked open, her nightlight casting a soft glow across the hallway. His daughter's world was so simple, so safe. Dinosaurs and cartoons, and the biggest crisis being which socks didn't match enough to wear to school. How did you help someone trapped in a completely different universe? What do you need from me? Lucas asked. The question hung in the air for several heartbeats. Lucas could almost hear Victoria weighing her words, calculating risks, deciding how much to pull a stranger into her unraveling life. I need someone Richard doesn't know exists, she finally said. Someone outside his network, outside his control. I need a friend, Lucas, just someone who isn't on his payroll or his radar, someone I can trust. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you didn't ask me for anything, didn't try to leverage our meeting into a job or investment or introduction, didn't sell the story to TMZ, you just listened. And right now that makes you the most trustworthy person in my life, which is either very sad or very telling. Probably both, Lucas said quietly. Probably. A pause. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called. You have a daughter, a life. You don't need this kind of complication. Victoria, wait. I'll figure it out. I always do. Thank you for picking up, for not... Stop. Lucas cut her off, his voice firm. Don't apologize for asking for help. And don't convince yourself you can handle this alone just because you're used to being strong. You called me for a reason. So let's figure this out together. Silence. Then, so quietly he almost missed it. Okay. Okay. First thing, are you in immediate danger? Does Richard know you found those papers? No. I put them back exactly as I found them. He thinks I'm working late, which is normal. I've been sleeping in my office more than our bedroom for months. He probably prefers it that way. Good. That buys us time. Second, do you have money he can't access? Accounts in your name only. Assets he doesn't control? Victoria laughed, bitter. I'm a billionaire who can't access her own money. Most of our assets are joint or held in trusts Richard manages. I have a personal checking account with maybe $200,000, pocket change, by his standards. Everything else requires his signature or approval from boards he controls. $200,000 as pocket change. Lucas tried to wrap his mind around that and failed. His entire net worth might reach $30,000 if he sold everything he owned, including organs. That's still enough to disappear if you need to, Lucas said. To hire lawyers, find a safe place, fight back. Running isn't the answer. If I disappear, Richard will use every resource at his disposal to find me. And when he does, I'll look unstable, mentally unfit, exactly the narrative he's building. I need to do this the right way. Publicly, carefully, with evidence of his control and my competence. I need to dismantle his strategy before he can deploy it. That takes time you might not have. I know, which is why I need to move faster than he expects. Strike before he's ready. Lucas heard the shift in her voice. fear giving way to something sharper, more focused. This was the woman who'd built an empire, the strategist underneath the trapped wife. "What's your plan?" Lucas asked. "I don't have one yet, but I'm working on it. In the meantime, can we meet? Somewhere Richard won't think to look. I need to talk through options with someone who isn't part of this world, someone who can see clearly." Lucas glanced at Mia's door, at the life he'd built that was small and safe and completely unprepared for whatever storm Victoria was about to unleash. Every instinct screamed that getting more involved was dangerous, reckless, potentially devastating. But he remembered her eyes in the Blue Note Lounge, the way she'd looked when she said she'd forgotten what wanting felt like. He thought about his own marriage ending, about Sarah leaving because she'd decided motherhood was a cage, about how alone he'd felt in those early months, how desperately he'd needed someone to just show up. "Tomorrow," Lucas said. "Bring Mia to the park around noon, Chaparral Park near the playground. We'll look like two parents whose kids are playing. No one will think twice." "Thank you." Relief flooded her voice. "Lucas, I mean it. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We haven't solved anything." "You answered the phone. That's more than most people would do." They hung up. Lucas stood in his dark hallway, phone still in his hand, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. Mia stirred in her room, mumbling something about pterodactyls in her sleep. He watched her for a moment through the cracked door. His entire world, his reason for every decision. Getting involved with Victoria's divorce could blow back on him, could bring lawyers, investigators, media attention he couldn't afford, could complicate his life in ways he couldn't predict. But walking away felt impossible. He'd seen too much, knew too much, and something in Victoria's voice had reached past his carefully constructed walls, past the protective instincts that usually kept him isolated and safe. Lucas climbed back into bed, but didn't sleep. Just stared at the ceiling, watching headlights from passing cars paint temporary constellations across the plaster, and tried to prepare for tomorrow. Chaparral Park sparkled under Sunday afternoon sun, filled with the usual weekend chaos of children and dogs and families making the most of October weather before Arizona's brief winter arrived. Lucas pushed Mia on the swings, watching her legs pump with determination as she tried to touch the sky with her toes. "Higher, Daddy! I want to go into space!" "Space is pretty far, kiddo. How about we settle for the clouds?" "Space," Mia insisted, laughing as the swing arced upward. Lucas pushed again, then checked his phone. 12:17. Victoria was late. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe Richard had stopped her. Maybe... "Excuse me, is this swing taken?" He turned. Victoria stood there, and for a moment Lucas didn't recognize her. Gone was the elegant billionaire in the designer dress. Instead, she wore jeans, actual jeans, slightly too stiff, like she'd bought them specifically for this meeting, and a plain white t-shirt under a denim jacket. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face free of the dramatic makeup from the gala. She looked younger, more uncertain, more human, and completely, utterly scared. "It's all yours," Lucas said, matching her casual tone. To anyone watching, they were strangers making small talk at a playground. "Mia, honey, someone needs the swing. Want to hit the slides instead?" 5 more minutes, Mia negotiated. 3. 4. Deal. Lucas let the swing slow naturally, then helped Mia dismount. She tore off toward the climbing structure without a backward glance, already absorbed in some elaborate dinosaur scenario playing out in her imagination. Victoria sat on the now empty swing, her movements stiff. Lucas took the one beside her, keeping his eyes on Mia rather than his companion. "You look different," he said quietly. "I Googled what normal people wear to parks. I think I got it wrong. These jeans cost $40 from Target, and they feel like cardboard." "That's about right. Give them a few washes." "I've never done laundry. We have people who—" Victoria stopped herself. "I sound insane." "You sound like someone who lived a specific kind of life. There's a difference." They swung gently, feet dragging in the mulch. Lucas watched Mia scale a climbing wall with the fearlessness of childhood, his heart doing its usual acrobatics between pride and terror. "She's beautiful," Victoria said. "She has your eyes. She has her mother's determination, which is both wonderful and exhausting." "You said your ex-wife left?" 2 years ago, woke up one morning and she was gone. Note on the kitchen table, half her clothes missing. Said she'd made a mistake getting married, having a kid. That she was too young to be trapped like this. Mia was 5. The words still hurt, even after all this time. I tried to fix it at first, therapy, conversations, promises, but you can't fix someone who's already decided they want a different life. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Did you love her? I thought I did. Now I think I love the idea of the family we were supposed to be. But Sarah was performing just like I was, playing house, playing parent, playing happy. Until she couldn't anymore. At least she left. At least she was honest about not wanting the life you'd built. That's one way to look at it. The other way is that she abandoned her daughter because being a mother wasn't Instagram-worthy enough. Bitterness crept into his voice. Lucas rarely talked about Sarah anymore, had trained himself to give neutral answers when Mia asked about Mommy, to avoid the rage that came when he let himself really think about it. "I'm sorry," Victoria said. "That must have been... We're not here to talk about my tragic backstory. We're here to figure out your next move." Victoria nodded, accepting the redirect. She pulled her phone from her pocket. A new one, Lucas noticed, not the expensive smartphone from Thursday night. "Burner phone," she explained. "Paid cash at a gas station this morning. No way to trace it back to me. I've started building escape hatches Richard doesn't know about." "Smart. What else?" "I called a lawyer yesterday. Someone in San Francisco with no Phoenix connections. She specializes in high net worth divorces involving abuse and coercive control. We had a preliminary consultation." "And?" "And she said I need evidence, documentation of Richard's control, financial records showing his manipulation of my accounts, testimony from staff about monitoring and restrictions, proof that I've been prevented from making independent decisions. The problem is that everything Richard has done is technically legal. He's my husband, my business partner. Our assets are joint. He hasn't broken any laws. Abuse doesn't have to be illegal to be real. Try convincing a judge of that when the abuser is a respected investment banker and the victim is a billionaire CEO. The power dynamic looks wrong from the outside. People assume I could leave anytime I want, that I have unlimited resources and options. They don't understand that money doesn't equal freedom when someone else controls access to it." Lucas thought about that. About how wealth created different kinds of cages, how the trappings of success could hide the most insidious forms of control. What did the lawyer suggest? Build a case, gather evidence, move money into accounts he can't freeze, create a paper trail showing attempts to leave and his interference. Basically, prepare for war before filing anything official. Victoria's hands tightened on the swing chains. "But every move I make is a risk. Richard is watching me more closely now. This morning he suggested we take a vacation together, just the two of us, somewhere remote. Said I've been stressed, that I need to relax. It sounded like a threat wrapped in concern." "You think he'd hurt you?" "Physically? No. Richard doesn't need violence. He has lawyers, money, connections. If he wanted to make me disappear into some private facility for exhaustion or mental health treatment, he could probably do it. The papers would call it a tragic breakdown. He'd express public concern while privately ensuring I never had credibility again." The calculating way she said it, like she'd already wargamed every possibility, sent chills down Lucas's spine. This wasn't paranoia. This was someone who understood exactly how much danger she was in. Mia's laughter carried across the playground. Lucas watched her make friends with another little girl, both of them now involved in some complex game involving the slide and a shared imaginary dragon. His daughter's world was so beautifully simple, problems solved with apologies and band-aids, conflicts resolved with games of tag. He wanted to keep it that way. "Victoria, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Okay?" "Is being in contact with me putting you in more danger? Is Richard watching you closely enough that meeting me here, calling me, is that making things worse?" She considered the question carefully. "Probably. But I've already decided the danger is worth it. I'm going to leave him, Lucas. The question isn't if, it's how. And doing it completely alone feels..." Her voice caught. "I've been alone in this marriage for 14 years. I can't do the leaving alone too." "You're not alone. But I'm also just a guy who works in marketing and knows nothing about divorce law or billionaire power games. I'm not sure how much help I actually am." You're someone who isn't afraid of Richard. You're someone who sees me as a person, not an asset or liability. That matters more than you know." They swung in silence for a few minutes, watching children play and parents chat and dogs chase balls across the grass. Normal Sunday afternoon at a normal park while they planned how to escape a cage made of money and control. "I have an idea," Lucas finally said. "It's probably stupid. Stupid ideas are my specialty lately. Let's hear it. Document everything, not just financial records, your actual life. Keep a journal on that burner phone. Every instance of Richard controlling your schedule, monitoring your location, making decisions without your input. Every time you feel afraid or trapped, make it personal, make it real. Because right now you're a CEO with resources. You need to become a human being with a story that people can understand." Victoria looked at him sharply. "You mean go public?" "Not yet. But eventually, if this goes to court, if Richard tries to paint you as unstable, you need a counter-narrative that's already built. You need people to understand that abuse looks different when you're rich, that control doesn't require violence, that a cage is still a cage even when it's gilded. Richard would destroy me. The PR battle alone. He's already planning to destroy you. Those papers you found prove that. So the question is whether you're going to let him write the story or if you're going to write your own." Victoria stared at her hands, at the designer wedding ring that probably cost more than Lucas's yearly salary. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled it off, held it up to the sunlight, watching it catch and refract. "I haven't taken this off in 14 years, she said quietly. "Even when I wanted to. Even when it felt like it was burning my skin, because taking it off would mean admitting failure, would mean I'd made a mistake marrying him. It's not failure to escape something that was hurting you. Tell that to every magazine that called me a genius for marrying well, for using Richard's connections to build my empire. Tell that to every woman who saw our marriage as proof that you could have it all: power, partnership, success. If I admit he was controlling me the whole time, I'm admitting I wasn't the genius everyone thought. I was just another woman who didn't see the trap until it was too late." Or, Lucas said gently, "you're showing that intelligence and success don't make you immune to manipulation, that even brilliant people can be caught by someone who knows how to exploit their blind spots. That's not weakness, Victoria. That's being human." She turned the ring over and over in her fingers. Then, in a movement so quick Lucas almost missed it, she threw it. The ring arced through the air, caught sunlight one last time, and disappeared into the mulch near the playground. "There," Victoria said, her voice shaking. "It's gone. We can find it. We can—" "I don't want to find it. Let some kid discover it and think they found treasure. Let it belong to someone who doesn't know what it cost." Lucas stared at her. She was crying now, silent tears tracking down her face, her hands empty and trembling in her lap. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "I'm more scared right now than I've ever been in my life." "I know. What if I can't do this? What if Richard wins? What if I lose everything, the company, my reputation, my freedom, and end up trapped anyway? Then you'll know you fought, that you tried, that you didn't spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd had the courage to leave." Mia ran over, breathless and grass-stained. "Daddy, me and Emma are playing dragons, and we need someone to be the princess in the tower. Can the lady be the princess?" Victoria looked at Lucas's daughter, this fearless, joyful child who saw the world as a playground and strangers as potential friends. Something shifted in her expression. "I'd be honored," Victoria said, wiping her eyes quickly. "But fair warning, I've never played dragons before." "That's okay." Mia grabbed her hand, tugging her off the swing. "I'll teach you. Come on." Lucas watched his daughter pull a billionaire CEO toward the playground, chattering about dragon rules and tower protocol. Victoria let herself be led, and for just a moment the fear left her face. She was just a woman playing pretend with a 7-year-old, escaping into imagination. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Is she with you?" R. Lucas's blood went cold. He looked up, scanning the park. Parents on benches, joggers on the path, a man reading a newspaper near the parking lot. Any of them could be watching. All of them could be innocent. He typed back, "Wrong number." The response came immediately. "I don't think so. Tell Victoria her husband is looking for her. Tell her running makes everything worse. Lucas deleted both messages with shaking hands, looked toward the playground where Victoria was helping Mia and Emma build a fortress out of mulch and sticks. She was laughing, actually laughing, and it was the first real joy he'd seen from her. He wanted to tell her, wanted to warn her that Richard knew, that they'd been found. But watching her play with his daughter, watching her remember what freedom looked like, even if just for 10 minutes, he couldn't bring himself to shatter the moment. Not yet. So Lucas sat on the swing and kept watch, scanning faces, memorizing cars, becoming the lookout for a woman he barely knew but was increasingly desperate to protect. Because someone had to. Because Victoria had asked for help, and he'd said yes. Because walking away now would mean abandoning her to whatever Richard was planning. And Lucas Reed, single father and mediocre marketing employee and owner of a dying Honda Civic, had learned through 2 years of solo parenting that you didn't abandon people who needed you. Not if you wanted to look your daughter in the eyes and teach her that the world could be kind, even when it cost you everything to prove it. 20 minutes later, Victoria returned with Mia, both of them pink-cheeked and disheveled. Emma had been collected by her parents. The playground was thinning out as families headed home for dinner. "That was the most fun I've had in years," Victoria said, and meant it. Lucas stood, dusting mulch from his jeans. "Mia, go grab your water bottle from the car. We need to head home soon." His daughter groaned but obeyed, skipping toward the parking lot with the boundless energy of childhood. Once she was out of earshot, Lucas turned to Victoria. "Richard knows. He texted me 10 minutes ago." The color drained from her face. "How? How does he have your number?" "I don't know, but he does. And he knows you're with me." Victoria's eyes darted to the parking lot, to the nearby street, searching for threats. "I need to go. I need to—" "Hey." Lucas caught her arm gently. "Breathe. You're okay. We're in public. There are witnesses. He can't do anything here." "You don't know what he can do. You don't know how far his reach goes." "Then tell me. Help me understand what we're up against." Victoria pulled out her phone, the burner, with shaking hands. Showed Lucas a text that had come in while she was playing with Mia. "Enjoying your play date? Come home. Now. We need to talk about your new friend." "He's tracking me somehow," Victoria said. "The burner phone, my car, something. He always knows where I am." Lucas thought fast. "Your car, does it have GPS?" "Of course, but—" Her eyes widened. "The dealership installed it. Richard's dealership. Oh my God, he's been tracking me for years." "Then we don't use your car. Leave it here. I'll drive you home." "Lucas, no. If he sees you, if he knows who you are, he already knows who I am. He has my phone number. We're past hiding." Lucas pulled his keys from his pocket. "Either I drive you home and you face him with someone in your corner, or you go alone and he has all the power. Your choice." Victoria looked at him, really looked at him, and Lucas saw her making calculations, weighing risks, deciding whether to trust him with her safety. Finally, she nodded. Mia chattered about dragons the entire drive to Paradise Valley, oblivious to the tension radiating from the adults up front. Victoria sat rigid in the passenger seat, staring at her hands, preparing for whatever confrontation waited at home. The Hale estate sat behind gates that probably cost more than Lucas's house. Security cameras tracked their approach. An intercom crackled to life before Lucas could reach for the button. "Mrs. Hale, please proceed." The gates opened like jaws. Lucas drove through, following Victoria's quiet directions up a curved driveway lined with manicured desert landscaping. The house, mansion really, sprawled across the hillside, all glass and stone and architectural statements. Through enormous windows, Lucas could see art that belonged in museums, furniture that belonged in magazines, a life that belonged to someone who'd never worried about bills or broken appliances or whether chicken nuggets counted as a balanced meal. "You can let me out here," Victoria said as they approached the entrance. "You don't need to, I'm walking you to the door." "Lucas, I'm walking you to the door," he repeated, firmer this time. "Mia, sweetheart, stay in the car. I'll be right back." They got out. The front door opened before they reached it. Richard Hale stood in the doorway, and Lucas understood immediately why Victoria was afraid. The man was tall, perfectly groomed, wearing casual Sunday clothes that probably cost thousands. His face was handsome in that generic way of the very wealthy. Good bone structure maintained by expensive skincare and careful living. He looked like every powerful executive in every magazine spread. But his eyes were ice. Victoria. Richard's voice was smooth, controlled. You had me worried. I went to the park. I told you I needed air. With him? Richard's gaze shifted to Lucas, assessing and dismissing in the same moment. And who might you be? Lucas met his stare. Someone giving your wife a ride home. How chivalrous, I'm Richard Hale. He extended a hand. Victoria's husband. The handshake was a test. Too firm, held too long, designed to intimidate. Lucas had endured enough corporate meetings to recognize the power play. He squeezed back, steady and unmoved. Lucas Reed. Mr. Reed, I appreciate you ensuring Victoria's safety, but I can take it from here. It wasn't a request. It was a dismissal wrapped in courtesy, backed by money and power, and the absolute certainty that Lucas would do as expected. Victoria touched Lucas's arm. It's fine. Thank you for the ride. But her eyes said something else. Please don't leave me alone with him. Lucas looked at Richard, at the man who'd spent 14 years constructing a cage around his wife, at the smile that didn't reach his eyes, the posture that screamed control, the unspoken threat in every carefully chosen word. Then he looked at Mia in the car, his daughter watching through the window, waiting for her father to come back. He had to choose. Stay and escalate a situation he couldn't win, risking Richard's attention and resources turning toward his family, or leave Victoria to face her husband alone, knowing that every moment he stayed away, she suffered. Victoria has my number, Lucas said slowly, still holding Richard's gaze. If she needs anything, a ride, a conversation, anything at all, she can call me. The temperature in Richard's eyes dropped another 10 degrees. How generous. But my wife has everything she needs right here. Does she? The question slipped out before Lucas could stop it. The air between them crystallized. Richard's smile remained fixed, but something dangerous moved beneath the surface. Mr. Reed, I'm going to give you some advice, free of charge. Whatever story my wife has told you, whatever sympathy she's garnered, it's not the whole picture. Victoria has been under tremendous stress. Building an empire takes a toll. Sometimes people in that position make poor decisions, seek comfort in inappropriate places, confuse concern with something else entirely. I'm sure you understand. The implication landed like a slap. Lucas felt rage building, but forced himself to stay calm, to match Richard's controlled tone. I understand perfectly. I understand that your wife asked for help, and I gave it. Nothing more, nothing less. And I'm grateful, truly, but your help is no longer needed. Victoria is home now, safe, exactly where she belongs. Where she belongs. Like property. Like something owned. Lucas looked at Victoria one more time. She was trembling despite the warm evening, her arms wrapped around herself. Every instinct screamed at him to get her out of there, to put her back in his car and drive until Richard's reach couldn't find them. But Mia was watching. His daughter, who trusted him to make good decisions, who believed her father could protect everyone, who didn't understand that some battles couldn't be won with good intentions. Call me, Lucas said to Victoria. Anytime. Then he walked back to his car, feeling Richard's eyes on him the entire way. Got behind the wheel. Drove back through those expensive gates and down the mountain, his hands shaking, his mind racing. Daddy, why was that man scary? Mia asked from the back seat. What do you mean, honey? The man at the big house. He smiled, but his eyes didn't smile. That's how villains look in movies. Out of the mouths of children. Lucas glanced in the rearview mirror at his brilliant, perceptive daughter. You're right, kiddo. He was scary. But sometimes we have to be brave even when people are scary, because that's how we help our friends. Is the nice lady from the park our friend? I think she might be. Good. I liked her. She was sad, but she played dragons anyway. That's brave. Lucas's throat tightened. Yeah, sweetheart. That's very brave. His phone rang as they pulled into their apartment complex. Victoria's burner number. Lucas answered. Are you okay? He knows everything. Her voice was barely a whisper, like she was hiding somewhere. Your name, your address, where Mia goes to school. He has files on you, Lucas. Background checks, financial records, employment history. He's been building a case since Thursday night. A case for what? Infidelity. Proof that I'm having an affair, that I'm unstable, that my judgment is compromised. He's going to file first, preemptive divorce, painting me as the cheater, the liar, the one who destroyed our marriage. And you, she choked on the words, you're going to be named in the filing, publicly, as my lover. Lucas felt the bottom drop out of his world. Named in a billionaire divorce. His name in papers. His daughter exposed to media attention. His quiet life detonated by someone else's war. I'm so sorry, Victoria was crying now. I never should have involved you. I was selfish and desperate, and now you're going to pay for it. I'm ending this. I'll go back to him. I'll play the perfect wife. Stop. Lucas's voice came out harder than he intended. Just stop. You didn't do this. Richard did, and you're not going back. But your daughter, my daughter is safe. I'll make sure of it. But you won't be safe if you stay, so we stick to the plan. You build your case, you find a way out, and He paused, realizing what he was about to commit to. I'll be here. Whatever you need. Why? The question was raw, genuine. Why would you risk everything for someone you barely know? Lucas thought about that. About Sarah leaving, about being abandoned, about what it felt like when no one showed up, about the kind of father he wanted to be for Mia, the kind of man who taught her by example that you didn't turn away from people who needed help just because it was inconvenient or dangerous. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. And because I think you're worth fighting for, even if you've forgotten that yourself. Silence. Then, barely audible. Thank you. Call me tomorrow. We'll figure out next steps. Okay. She hung up. Lucas sat in his car in the parking lot of his apartment complex, looking up at the lit windows where normal people lived normal lives, untouched by billionaire power games and coercive control. He just made a choice that could destroy everything he'd built. Could expose his daughter to scrutiny she didn't deserve. Could cost him his job, his reputation, his carefully constructed stability. But he'd also just stood up to a man who believed money made him untouchable. Had told a woman trapped in an invisible cage that she deserved freedom. Had shown Mia, who was unbuckling her seatbelt and chattering about dinner, that her father was the kind of person who helped people even when it was hard. The consequences would come. Richard Hale wasn't someone who forgot or forgave. The storm Victoria had warned about was gathering. But tonight, Lucas had chosen courage over fear. And tomorrow, they'd start building a way out. The first warning shot came at 9:47 a.m. on Monday morning, delivered by email, while Lucas was in a meeting about solar panel marketing strategies he couldn't focus on. His phone buzzed against the conference table, and something made him check it despite the dirty look from his boss. The subject line stopped his heart. Legal notice. Read. Lucas M. He opened it under the table, hands suddenly slick with sweat. The law firm's letterhead was imposing. Morrison, Chen and Associates, one of those names that appeared on billboards downtown and sponsored charity galas. The message was brief and devastating in its courtesy. Mr. Reed was advised that he had been identified as a party of interest in ongoing domestic proceedings involving Richard and Victoria Hale. His cooperation would be appreciated. A deposition had been scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. Failure to appear could result in a court order compelling his testimony. Lucas read it twice, his mind refusing to process the words. 4 days. He had 4 days before lawyers working for a man with unlimited resources would put him under oath and ask questions designed to destroy Victoria's credibility and his own life in the process. His boss was still droning on about Q4 projections. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Coffee went cold in styrofoam cups. Everything was utterly, devastatingly normal, except for the legal bomb that had just detonated in Lucas's inbox. He excused himself from the meeting with mumbled apologies about a family emergency, which wasn't technically a lie. In the hallway, hands shaking, he called Victoria's burner number. She answered on the first ring. He moved fast, didn't he? You got one too? Mine came by courier at 6 this morning. Hand-delivered to my office with 3 security guards watching to make sure I received it personally. Her voice was eerily calm, the kind of calm that came after panic had burned itself out. Richard filed papers this morning. Divorce on grounds of infidelity and abandonment of marital duties. I'm cited as mentally unstable, having engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate employee. That would be you. And making reckless decisions that compromise my ability to run Hale Innovations. I'm not your employee. We barely know each other. Facts don't matter when the narrative is already written. He has photos, Lucas. From the gala, me leaving with you. From the park, us on the swings, me playing with Mia. Taken from a distance, cropped carefully, they look exactly like what he's claiming. A woman having an affair, introducing her lover to his child, building a new life behind her husband's back. Lucas leaned against the hallway wall, feeling the corporate beige press in from all sides. What do we do? I don't know. My lawyer says the deposition is a trap. They'll ask questions designed to make any answer look bad. If you admit we met alone, it feeds the affair narrative. If you deny knowing me well, they'll ask why you risked your career and reputation for a stranger. There's no good answer. Then I tell the truth, that you asked for help and I gave it, that nothing inappropriate happened, that your husband is a controlling abuser and this is his way of maintaining power. Victoria laughed, sharp and bitter. And they'll ask for proof, recordings of abuse, photographs of violence, police reports that don't exist because Richard never laid a hand on me. They'll paint you as a knight-errant falling for a damsel in distress fantasy, and me as a manipulative woman who convinced you to help destroy my marriage. We'll both be destroyed, and Richard will win. There has to be something we can do. There is. You can withdraw. Tell the lawyers you were mistaken about the nature of our relationship, that it was a brief encounter at a charity event and nothing more. Distance yourself before this gets worse. I'm not abandoning you. Lucas, please. Think about Mia. Think about what happens when her father's name is all over the news as the other man in a billionaire divorce. Think about reporters at her school, other parents gossiping, her mother, God, Sarah could use this for custody. You have everything to lose and nothing to gain. She was right. Lucas knew she was right. The smart move, the safe move, was to walk away. Cooperate with Richard's lawyers, minimize the damage, protect his daughter from the fallout. Victoria had resources, had her own lawyers, would eventually find a way out without dragging him down with her. But the image of her standing on that terrace, whispering, "Please take me somewhere private," with desperation cracking her voice, wouldn't leave his mind. The memory of Richard's ice-cold eyes and proprietary hand on her back, the way she'd laughed playing dragons with Mia, like she'd forgotten what joy felt like. "I'm not walking away," Lucas said again. "But we need to be smarter than they are. We need our own strategy." "What kind of strategy?" "I don't know yet, but I know someone who might. Give me until tonight. I'll call you back." He hung up before she could argue, before his own fear could convince him this was insane. Back in the conference room, his boss was wrapping up the meeting with assignments Lucas hadn't heard. He grabbed his laptop and notes, mumbled agreement to whatever had been decided, and escaped to his cubicle. The office hummed around him with the usual Monday energy. Keyboards clicked. Phones rang. People discussed weekend plans and fantasy football. Normal life, continuing obliviously while Lucas's world crumbled. He pulled up his contacts, scrolling to a name he hadn't called in 6 months. David Chen, law school friend who'd actually passed the bar while Lucas had pivoted to marketing after realizing he hated legal theory. They'd stayed in touch loosely, occasional beers when David wasn't drowning in casework. David specialized in employment law, not family law, but he'd know people. More importantly, he'd know how to think through this strategically. The phone rang 4 times before connecting. "Lucas Reed, haven't heard from you since you bailed on my birthday drinks. This better be good. I need help, legal help, and I need you to keep this quiet." David's tone shifted immediately from casual to professional. "What kind of trouble are we talking about?" "The kind where I'm about to be named in a billionaire divorce, and I don't have money for lawyers who charge what billionaires pay." Silence. Then, "Jesus Christ, Lucas, what did you do?" "Helped someone. Wrong person's wife, apparently." "Okay. Don't say anything else on the phone. Can you meet me for lunch? There's a taco place in Tempe, hole in the wall, nobody we know goes there. Text me the address. I'll be there at noon." Lucas spent the next 2 hours pretending to work while his mind raced through scenarios, each worse than the last. At 11:45, he told his boss he had a dentist appointment and drove to Tempe with his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The taco place was exactly as advertised. Small, cramped, smelling of cilantro and grilled meat, filled with construction workers and college students who wouldn't recognize a celebrity if one sat next to them. David was already there, tucked into a back booth, looking exactly like he had in law school. Slightly rumpled suit, coffee-stained tie, sharp eyes that missed nothing. He waved Lucas over. "Talk," David said without preamble. "Start at the beginning, leave nothing out." So Lucas talked. Told him about the gala, Victoria's whispered plea, the drives to the jazz club and the park, Richard's threats and tracking, the divorce papers citing infidelity, the deposition scheduled for Thursday. By the time he finished, his tacos had gone cold, and David's expression had progressed from concerned to alarmed to something resembling professional horror. "You're telling me you're caught in the middle of a coercive control case involving Richard Hale," David said slowly. The Richard Hale. Investment banker, major political donor, on the board of half the Fortune 500 companies in Arizona. I didn't know who he was when this started. That doesn't matter. What matters is he has unlimited resources, connections in every courthouse in the state, and a reputation for destroying anyone who gets in his way. I've heard stories, business rivals who ended up bankrupt, employees who criticized him publicly and never worked again. The man collects grudges like art. So what do I do? David rubbed his face. Honestly, the smart move is exactly what Victoria suggested. Cooperate with his lawyers, minimize your involvement, hope he's satisfied with destroying her reputation and leaves you alone. I can't do that. Lucas, I'm serious. This isn't some principled stand situation. This is a man who could make your life hell for the next decade. Lawsuits, investigations, making sure you never get hired anywhere respectable. He could go after custody of Mia, claim you're exposing her to dangerous situations. I've seen powerful people do worse for smaller offenses. Then help me find another way. There isn't another way. You're not married to Victoria, you have no legal standing, no claim to make. You're just some guy who gave her a ride, and now you're collateral damage in their war. Lucas met his friend's eyes. What if I'm not collateral damage? What if I'm a witness? David frowned. Witness to what? To her asking for help, to her being afraid of her own husband, to Richard tracking her movements and threatening people who support her. If this goes to court, if she files for divorce on her own terms, citing abuse and control, I can testify to what I saw. I can be evidence that she was trying to escape. That's assuming she files. Right now, Richard's controlling the narrative. He's framing this as her having an affair and him being the wounded husband. Your testimony doesn't help if she never gets a chance to tell her story. Then we help her get that chance before Thursday, before the deposition. David looked at him like he'd lost his mind. You want her to file for divorce in 3 days. I want her to stop reacting to Richard's moves and start making her own. He's betting she's too afraid, too trapped, too worried about reputation to fight back. What if he's wrong? Lucas, listen to yourself. You're talking about convincing a woman to blow up her entire life on a 3-day timeline. That's insane. Staying is insane. Richard is already destroying her. The only question is whether she goes down fighting or goes down quiet. David was quiet for a long moment, his lawyer brain clearly working through scenarios. Finally, he sighed. I can't represent either of you. Conflict of interest, wrong specialty, and frankly, I like my career too much to commit professional suicide. But I know someone, Melissa Torres. Does family law, specializes in high net worth divorces with abuse components. She's expensive, but brilliant. And more importantly, she hates bullies. Can you call her? I can make an introduction. But Lucas, this is going to get ugly. If Victoria files first, Richard will retaliate with everything he has. Your name will still be in papers, your life will still be examined, Mia will still be affected. The only difference is you'll be fighting instead of hiding. I'd rather fight. David pulled out his phone. You're either the bravest person I know or the stupidest, possibly both. Probably both. The call to Melissa Torres lasted 20 minutes. David explained the situation in careful legal language while Lucas listened to his own life described as a case study in complications. When David finally hung up, his expression was grim. She'll meet with Victoria tomorrow morning. 9 a.m., her office in Scottsdale. She needs to see financial records, documentation of control, anything Victoria has gathered. And Lucas, she wants to meet you too. Separate appointment tomorrow afternoon. You're going to be deposed by Richard's team regardless, but Melissa wants to prep you first. Make sure you don't walk into that meeting unprepared. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me if you both survive this. David stood, gathering his coat. And Lucas? Be careful. Richard Hale didn't get where he is by playing fair. If he sees you as a threat, he won't stop at legal maneuvers. They parted in the parking lot. Lucas sat in his car, the afternoon sun beating through the windshield, and called Victoria. I found us a lawyer, he said when she answered. Melissa Torres. David says she's the best in the state for this kind of case. She'll meet with you tomorrow at 9. Victoria was quiet. Then, she'll want money. Retainers for lawyers like that start at $50,000. Do you have access to that much? I can get it. I've been moving money carefully, small amounts Richard won't notice missing. It'll clean me out of accessible funds, but yes, I can pay her retainer. Then we move forward. Tomorrow you meet with Melissa. You give her everything. Financial records, documentation of control, that journal I told you to keep. You build a case that's stronger than Richard's narrative, and then you file first. Lucas, if I file, there's no going back. Richard is already coming after you, after us. The only question is whether you meet him on his terms or yours. And I think you're done living on his terms. He heard her breathing, heard the decision being made in real time. Victoria Hale, billionaire CEO, who'd forgotten what wanting felt like, choosing whether to reclaim her life or surrender to the cage she'd lived in for 14 years. Okay, she finally said. Okay, I'll meet with her. God, I can't believe I'm doing this. You can do this. You built a company from nothing. You're one of the most successful women in America. Richard wants you to forget that, but I haven't. And I'm betting Melissa Torres hasn't either. What about you? What about the deposition? I meet with Melissa tomorrow afternoon. She'll prep me. And on Thursday, I'll tell the truth. That I helped you because you asked, because you were afraid, because it was the right thing to do. Let Richard's lawyers try to twist that into something ugly. I'll know what it really was. Victoria laughed shakily. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly naive. Everyone keeps telling me that. Maybe it's both. Maybe. A pause. Lucas, thank you for not walking away. I know what this is costing you. You're worth it. Remember that when things get hard. You're worth fighting for. He hung up before emotion could crack his voice. Sat in the parking lot of a taco place in Tempe, watching college kids come and go, living their uncomplicated lives. His phone showed 2:17 p.m. Mia would be in art class right now, probably painting dinosaurs or space or some elaborate combination of both. His daughter, whose world was about to get complicated in ways she couldn't understand yet. Lucas pulled up Sarah's number, stared at it. His ex-wife lived in California now, sent child support irregularly, and called even less frequently. She'd abandoned Mia without looking back. But if this divorce became public, if Lucas's name hit the news, Sarah would see it. And she might decide her daughter was worth reclaiming after all, especially if it meant hurting Lucas in the process. He needed to get ahead of that. Needed to tell her before she read it online. The call went to voicemail, as expected. Sarah rarely answered his calls. Hey, it's Lucas. I need to talk to you about something important. It's about Mia. She's fine. Nothing's wrong with her. But there's a situation developing that might affect custody arrangements, and I want you to hear it from me first. Call me back. Short, factual, giving nothing away. Sarah might not call back for days, but at least he'd tried. Lucas drove back to work, sat through the rest of his shift in a fog, picked up Mia from after-school care with a smile that felt like a mask. They stopped for groceries. Mia insisted on the dinosaur chicken nuggets even though they'd had them 3 times that week, and headed home to their small apartment where the refrigerator hummed too loud and the neighbor's TV bled through the walls. Normal life. The life Lucas had built from the wreckage of his marriage, small and safe and utterly insufficient to protect them from what was coming. Daddy, you're quiet, Mia observed over dinner, arranging her nuggets into a T-Rex formation before eating them. Did something bad happen? Just a long day at work, sweetheart. Oh, can we watch a movie after dinner? Sure, your pick. She chose Encanto as predicted. They curled up on the couch together, Mia singing along to every song while Lucas pretended to watch and actually ran through everything that could go wrong. The deposition, the media coverage, Richard's lawyers finding some way to paint him as dangerous or unstable. Sarah swooping in with a custody challenge. His boss deciding an employee caught in a scandal was too much liability. The worst part was knowing he'd chosen this. Had walked into Victoria's life with full knowledge it could blow up his own. Could have said no on that terrace, could have dropped her off and never answered her calls, could have protected his small, safe world by ignoring someone else's suffering. But he hadn't. And watching Mia lean against his chest, her small, warm weight trusting him completely, Lucas knew he'd make the same choice again. Because the alternative was teaching his daughter that you only helped people when it was convenient. That courage only mattered when it was safe. That some humans were worth fighting for and others weren't. He couldn't live with that lesson, so he'd live with the consequences instead. Mia fell asleep before the movie ended, her head heavy on his shoulder. Lucas carried her to bed, tucked her in with the stuffed triceratops she'd had since she was 3, and stood in her doorway watching her sleep, memorizing this moment of peace before the storm hit. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria's burner. I've been thinking about what you said, about writing my own story instead of letting Richard write it for me. I started a new journal entry tonight. It starts with, I deserve to be free. Thank you for reminding me that's true. Lucas typed back, you've always deserved it. Tomorrow we start making it real. Her response came quickly. I'm scared, me too. But we're doing it anyway. Yes, we are. Lucas spent the next hour after Mia was asleep doing what he should have done days ago, preparing for war. He gathered every financial document he had, every text message and email related to Victoria, screenshots of Richard's threatening texts, built a timeline of events with dates and details, wrote down everything he could remember from conversations, meetings, observations, made himself useful as a witness instead of just collateral damage. At midnight, he finally climbed into bed, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept running through scenarios, each more devastating than the last. Around 2 a.m., he gave up and moved to the living room, opened his laptop, and did something that was either brilliant or suicidal. He started writing. Not a legal document or a statement, a story. His story. What really happened between him and Victoria, told in his own words, stripped of legal language and defense mechanisms. The truth, raw and unvarnished. The gala, the jazz club, the park, the fear in Victoria's eyes and the ice in Richard's. How helping her had felt like the most important thing he'd done since becoming a father, even knowing it could cost him everything. Lucas wrote for 3 hours straight, fingers flying across the keyboard, words pouring out like confession. He didn't know what he'd do with it. Maybe nothing. Maybe show it to Melissa Torres. Maybe publish it if everything went to hell and the truth needed to be told before Richard's version became the only version. But writing it felt like reclaiming something, like refusing to let someone else define what had happened, like Victoria taking off her wedding ring and throwing it into the mulch, a small act of defiance that mattered because it was chosen. When he finally finished, the sky outside was starting to lighten, 5:47 a.m. Mia would wake up in an hour. Lucas saved the document, encrypted it, backed it up to 3 different cloud services. Evidence, testimony. His voice, preserved in case Richard Hale tried to silence it. Then he made coffee, started Mia's breakfast, and prepared for Tuesday. The meeting with Melissa Torres was scheduled for 2 p.m. Lucas took a long lunch, drove to her Scottsdale office, trying not to feel intimidated by the glass tower and marble lobby. The receptionist was expecting him, led him to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Melissa Torres was nothing like Lucas expected. Where he'd imagined someone corporate and cold, she was warm and sharp-eyed, maybe 50, with silver streaking her black hair and laugh lines around her mouth. She stood when he entered, offered a firm handshake. Mr. Reed, thank you for coming. Can I get you water? Coffee? Water's fine. She poured from a pitcher, settled across from him, and pulled out a legal pad. I met with Victoria this morning. 4 hours. Went through her entire history with Richard. I'll be frank with you. It's one of the most clear-cut cases of coercive control I've seen in 20 years of practice. No physical violence, no screaming fights, just systematic elimination of her autonomy disguised as partnership. It's textbook, and it's devastating. Can you help her? I can try, but I need to understand your role in this. David gave me the basics, but I want to hear it from you. Why did you get involved? Lucas told the story again. The same one he'd written at 3 a.m., watching Melissa's face for judgment or skepticism. She just listened, taking occasional notes, her expression neutral. When he finished, she set down her pen. Do you understand what Richard's lawyers will do with this? They'll frame you as either an opportunist who saw a wealthy woman in distress and inserted yourself for financial gain, or as a naive fool who fell for a manipulative woman's victim narrative. They'll question your judgment, your motives, your fitness as a parent. They'll turn helping someone into evidence of instability. I know. And you're still willing to testify? To be deposed on Thursday and later in court if it goes to trial? Yes. Why? Lucas thought about that. Because Victoria asked for help, and I gave it. Because walking away now would mean Richard wins. Not just against her, but against the idea that people can support each other without ulterior motives. And because I want my daughter to grow up knowing her father stood up for someone who needed it, even when it was hard. Melissa studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled, small and fierce. Okay, let's get you ready to be the best witness Richard Hale never wanted to face. They spent the next 2 hours going through deposition strategy. How to answer questions directly without giving ammunition. How to stay calm when lawyers tried to provoke emotional reactions. How to tell the truth in ways that couldn't be twisted into lies. Melissa was thorough, relentless, playing devil's advocate until Lucas wanted to scream. Remember, she said as they wrapped up, they'll try to make you angry. That's the goal. Get you emotional, get you defensive, get you to say something reactive they can use against you. Your job is to stay steady, stay factual, stay human. You're not a knight in shining armor. You're not a homewrecker. You're just someone who helped another person. That's your truth. Don't let them complicate it. What about Victoria? What's her strategy? She's filing for divorce tomorrow morning, citing coercive control, financial manipulation, and emotional abuse. We're requesting a restraining order preventing Richard from accessing her personal accounts or interfering with her ability to run Hale Innovations. It's aggressive, it's fast, and it's going to detonate like a bomb. He'll retaliate. Of course he will. But Victoria's done being reactive. She's taking control of her narrative before he can finish writing his version. You helped her remember she's strong enough to do that. Lucas left the office feeling simultaneously prepared and terrified. Wednesday passed in a blur of normal life made surreal by impending disaster. Work, school pickup, dinner, bedtime routine, all of it performed on autopilot while his mind stayed locked on Thursday's deposition. On Wednesday night, Victoria called. I'm filing tomorrow, she said, her voice steady in a way it hadn't been before. Melissa is submitting papers first thing in the morning. By noon, Richard will be served. By evening, it'll be news. How are you feeling? Strangely calm. Like I've been holding my breath for 14 years and I'm finally about to exhale. It's going to be ugly, isn't it? Probably. But I'll be free. Even if I lose everything else. Even if Richard destroys my reputation and takes the company and makes me into a villain, I'll be free of him. That's worth it. You won't lose everything. Melissa's good, and you're stronger than Richard thinks. I hope you're right. A pause. Lucas, whatever happens tomorrow, whatever comes after, thank you. For showing up, for staying, for reminding me I was worth saving. You saved yourself. I just drove the car. She laughed, and it sounded like relief, like hope, like someone on the edge of something terrifying and necessary. See you on the other side. See you on the other side. Thursday morning arrived cold and bright, one of those perfect Arizona autumn days that made people forget the state was mostly desert. Lucas dressed carefully in his best suit, the same one he'd worn to the gala, and dropped Mia at school with extra hugs and promises to pick her up on time. The deposition was scheduled for 2 p.m. at Morrison, Chen & Associates downtown offices. Lucas arrived 15 minutes early, sat in the parking garage trying to control his breathing. His phone buzzed. News alert. Victoria Hale files for divorce, cites abuse by prominent banker husband. It was real. She'd done it. Lucas walked into the building with his head high, ready to tell the truth, ready for whatever Richard's lawyers would throw at him. Ready to be the witness Victoria needed, the friend he'd promised to be, the man who'd chosen courage over safety. The conference room was intimidating. Long table, leather chairs, 3 lawyers in expensive suits who looked at Lucas like he was something they'd scraped off their shoes. Richard wasn't there, but his presence hung over the room like smog. The lead lawyer, a woman with a severe bun and colder eyes than Richard's, gestured to a chair. "Mr. Reed, thank you for coming. This won't take long." She was lying. Lucas knew she was lying, but he sat down anyway, raised his right hand when asked, swore to tell the truth, and prepared to fight. The lead attorney's name was Catherine Walsh, and she smiled like a shark before her first question. Lucas sat across from her with a court reporter to his right, recording every word, every pause, every breath that could be weaponized later. The room smelled of leather and expensive cologne and the particular tension that came before battle. "Mr. Reed, let's start simply. How did you meet Victoria Hale?" Lucas kept his voice steady, remembering Melissa's coaching. Direct answers. No elaboration. Stay calm. At a charity gala in Scottsdale on October 15th. And did you know who she was before that evening? I recognized her face from magazine covers. I knew she was a successful CEO. I didn't know anything personal about her. Catherine made a note, her pen scratching across legal paper. But you approached her anyway. At an event where you admitted you didn't belong, where by your own account you were uncomfortable and planning to leave early, you chose to approach one of the wealthiest, most recognizable women in Arizona. Why? The trap was obvious. Say he approached her out of attraction and he looked opportunistic. Say he approached out of concern and they'd question his judgment, ask why he thought a stranger's distress was his business. She looked like she needed help, Lucas said simply. Help with what, specifically? I couldn't have told you at the time. She just looked alone, scared, like someone who was holding together by force of will. And you felt qualified to determine this from across a crowded ballroom? I felt human enough to recognize pain when I saw it. Catherine's smile tightened. How noble. So you approached Mrs. Hale, a married woman, and said what exactly? I asked if she was okay, and she said that she was fine. Then I told her she didn't look fine. You contradicted her, challenged her statement, inserted your judgment of her mental state despite being a complete stranger. Lucas felt his jaw clench. Melissa had warned him about this, how they'd take normal human interaction and twist it into something invasive and inappropriate. I expressed concern. That's different from inserting judgment. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, Mr. Reed, it sounds like you saw a vulnerable woman and decided you knew better than she did about her own well-being. That's quite presumptuous. Or it's called paying attention, noticing when someone's struggling. And what made you think she was struggling? Her expensive dress? Her successful career? Her prominent marriage? Most people would consider those signs of a woman who has everything. Most people don't look past the surface. Catherine leaned forward. But you did. You looked past the surface and saw, what? A damsel in distress? A woman who needed rescuing by Lucas Reed, marketing employee and single father? The condescension in her voice was designed to provoke. Lucas took a slow breath, counting to 3 before responding. I saw someone who asked for help, that's all. Ah, yes, the help. Tell me about that. Mrs. Hale asked you to take her somewhere private. Those were her exact words, correct? Yes. And you, a married woman's request to be taken somewhere private by a strange man, you didn't find that inappropriate? I found it desperate. Desperate enough to immediately agree? To take her to your car, drive her to a dark bar, sit with her for over an hour in an intimate setting? The Blue Note Lounge isn't dark. It's a respected jazz club, and we sat in a booth in public view. But you chose that location, a place you were familiar with, where you knew the bartender by name, where you'd been before. You took a vulnerable woman who'd just asked a stranger for help to your personal sanctuary, Why not somewhere more neutral? A coffee shop? A restaurant? Lucas saw where this was going. Make the jazz club sound seedy. Make his choice sound calculated. Make the whole evening sound like seduction rather than rescue. She asked to go somewhere quiet, somewhere she wouldn't be recognized. The Blue Note fit those criteria. And it just happened to be a romantic setting. Low lighting, live music, alcohol, quite the atmosphere for two people who barely knew each other. It's a music venue, not a honeymoon suite. But you did buy her drinks, multiple drinks, according to the bartender we interviewed. 2 whiskeys, and I offered. She was clearly upset. Upset enough to drink with a stranger. Upset enough to confide intimate details of her marriage. Upset enough to let you drive her around Phoenix for hours while her husband worried about her whereabouts. Catherine's voice sharpened. Did you know Mr. Hale filed a missing person report that night? That he was calling hospitals and police stations while his wife was drinking whiskey with you? Lucas felt a jolt of surprise. That detail hadn't come up before. Was it even true, or was Catherine baiting him? I didn't know that. Victoria didn't mention it. Victoria, you're on a first-name basis with a woman you claim to barely know. What else would I call her? Mrs. Hale sounds ridiculous in casual conversation. Was it casual, Mr. Reed? Because from the evidence we've gathered, it seems quite intense. A woman confiding about her unhappy marriage. A man listening, offering support, telling her she deserved better. That's a classic affair dynamic. We're not having an affair. No? Then explain the park. Explain why you met Mrs. Hale at a children's playground 3 days after your initial encounter. Explain why she removed her wedding ring during that meeting and threw it away. Explain why your daughter was present for what appears to be an intimate conversation between you and a married woman. Lucas's hands were clenched under the table, his nails digging into his palms. Catherine was good at this, taking innocent moments and reshaping them into something sinister. Victoria called me in distress. She said her husband knew about our first meeting and was threatening retaliation. She needed someone to talk to, somewhere safe. I suggested the park because it's public, because Mia was with me, because there's nothing suspicious about 2 adults having a conversation while children play. Nothing suspicious except the married woman removing her wedding ring and discarding it while you watched. She made that choice. I didn't suggest it or encourage it. But you didn't discourage it either. You didn't suggest she think carefully before symbolically ending her marriage in front of a man she'd known for less than a week. It wasn't my place to discourage her from anything. Her marriage, her choices. Her marriage to my client. Her choices that affect his life, his reputation, his emotional well-being. You didn't consider that? Didn't think about the man whose wife you were spending time with, whose marriage you were inserting yourself into? Lucas met Catherine's eyes directly. I thought about the woman who asked for help. That's who I was concerned about. Because she told you stories about her husband, about being controlled, being monitored, being trapped. Did you verify any of these claims? How would I verify them? You could have spoken to Mr. Hale, heard his side before deciding he was a villain and she was a victim. Abusers don't typically admit to abuse when confronted. Catherine pounced. So you believe Mr. Hale is an abuser, based on one conversation with his wife and 0 independent evidence. Based on her fear. Based on what I observed. Based on him tracking her movements and threatening me for helping her. Ah, yes, the alleged threats. Tell me about those. Lucas recounted the text messages, Richard's cold greeting at the house, the background check Catherine's firm had undoubtedly run on him. The attorney listened with an expression that suggested she found the whole thing overblown. So Mr. Hale sent you a text message asking about his wife's location. As her husband, he's entitled to know where she is. He spoke to you at his own home when you drove her there uninvited. As the homeowner, he's entitled to be present. He ran a background check on a stranger spending time with his wife. As a concerned spouse, he's entitled to know who she's associating with. None of that constitutes threats, Mr. Reed. That's a husband exercising reasonable concern. Reasonable concern doesn't include having people followed, doesn't include tracking your wife's car without her knowledge. You have proof he's tracking her car. Lucas hesitated. He had Victoria's word, her suspicions, her fear. But actual proof? Documentation? Victoria told me he was. Mrs. Hale told you. The same woman who's now filing for divorce and citing abuse despite living in a mansion, running a $1 billion company, and having access to resources most abuse victims could only dream of. You don't see how her claims might be exaggerated? How a woman looking to justify leaving her marriage might paint her husband in the worst possible light? I see a woman who's terrified of what her husband will do if she leaves. That fear is real, whether or not you believe the reasons behind it. Catherine sat back, switching tactics. Let's talk about your background, Mr. Reed. You're a single father, correct? Yes. Divorced 2 years ago. Your ex-wife left you and your daughter. That must have been difficult. Lucas's stomach dropped. They were going after his history now, looking for ammunition. It was challenging. We managed. Your ex-wife, Sarah Kensington, she left because she felt trapped in the marriage, correct? Because she felt you were controlling and demanding? That's not... She left because she didn't want to be a mother. She said so explicitly in her note. A note you claim to have but haven't produced. We only have your version of why she left, just like we only have Mrs. Hale's version of why she wants to leave my client. Interesting pattern, Mr. Reed. 2 women in your life both claiming to feel trapped, both needing to escape. Makes one wonder if the common denominator is you. Rage flared white-hot in Lucas's chest. His hand shook. This was exactly what Melissa had warned about, the provocation, the personal attacks designed to make him lose control. My ex-wife and Victoria have nothing in common. Sarah left because she was selfish. Victoria's leaving because she's trapped. Or both women wanted out of relationships with controlling men and found ways to justify their departures. You admit you approached Mrs. Hale without invitation. You admit you took her away from an event where her husband expected her to be. You admit you encouraged her to question her marriage. Those are controlling behaviors, Mr. Reed. Those are supportive behaviors when someone asks for help. Or opportunistic behaviors when a lonely single father sees a chance with a beautiful, wealthy woman. Catherine's smile was poisonous. Tell me, Mr. Reed, what did you hope to gain from this relationship? There is no relationship. We're friends. That's all. Friends who meet secretly, friends who discuss leaving spouses, friends who involve your young daughter in their private meetings. That's an interesting definition of friendship. Mia was at the park because it was Sunday and I had custody. Her presence made everything more appropriate, not less. Did she meet Mrs. Hale? Interact with her? Lucas hesitated, knowing the answer would be used against him. Yes, they played together briefly. So you introduced your 7-year-old daughter to your married friend. Let them bond. Let your daughter get attached to a woman who's about to blow up her marriage and drag you through a very public divorce. That seems like poor judgment for a parent. Mia played with another child at a park. That's normal childhood behavior. Except the other child was being supervised by a woman having an emotional affair with her father. That's not normal, Mr. Reed. That's inappropriate. We're not having an affair. Lucas's voice came out louder than intended. The court reporter's fingers paused on her keyboard. Catherine's smile widened. She'd gotten the reaction she wanted. Then what would you call it? A married woman confiding in you about intimate marital problems? Secret meetings? Emotional support that crosses professional boundaries? If it's not an affair, it's certainly affair adjacent. Lucas forced himself to breathe slowly, to calm down, to remember Melissa's instructions. They wanted him angry, wanted him defensive, wanted him to look unstable. I call it helping another human being. If that makes me guilty of something, then I'm guilty. Catherine made another note. Let's discuss the timeline. You met Mrs. Hale on October 15th. She filed for divorce on November 2nd. That's 18 days from first contact to filing for divorce. Don't you think that's remarkably fast? I think when someone realizes they need to leave, timing becomes less important than safety. Or timing becomes convenient when there's someone else waiting. Someone who's already established himself as supportive and understanding. Someone who's already met her daughter figure and integrated himself into her life. Mia isn't Victoria's daughter figure. They played for 20 minutes. But they could become close, couldn't they? If you and Mrs. Hale continue this relationship, if she leaves her husband and you're there to comfort her, your daughter could end up with a very wealthy stepmother. That must be appealing for a single father struggling financially. Lucas gripped the edge of the table. I'm not struggling financially, and I'm not pursuing Victoria for money or any other reason. I helped her because she asked. That's the entire story. That's your version of the story. My client has a different version, one where you targeted his wife at a vulnerable moment, isolated her from her support system, and encouraged her to destroy her marriage. One where you saw an opportunity and took it. Your client is an abuser who's losing control of his victim and is desperate to maintain power. This deposition is part of that. Intimidation dressed up as legal process. Catherine's expression went ice cold. Careful, Mr. Reed. Accusations of abuse are serious. Defamation is actionable. And you have no evidence beyond the word of a woman who stands to gain billions from a successful divorce claim. I have my observations. I have her fear. I have Richard's behavior toward me. You have subjective interpretations and alleged threats. That's not evidence. That's confirmation bias. She closed her notebook with a snap. We're done here. For now. But Mr. Reed, understand this. If you continue to involve yourself in my client's marriage, if you continue to encourage Mrs. Hale's unfounded claims, if you persist in this affair or friendship or whatever you're calling it, we will pursue every legal avenue available to protect Mr. Hale's interests. That includes defamation suits, interference claims, and custody challenges regarding your daughter's well-being. The threat landed like a punch. Lucas stood, his legs unsteady. Are you threatening my daughter? I'm informing you of consequences. Your choices affect her. Choose wisely. Lucas left the conference room with his heart hammering, rage and fear churning in his stomach. The elevator ride down felt endless. He made it to his car before his hands started shaking so badly he couldn't get the key in the ignition. They'd threatened Mia, actually threatened his daughter as leverage to make him abandon Victoria. His phone rang. Melissa Torres. How did it go? She asked. They threatened custody, said they'd go after Mia if I don't back off. Melissa was quiet for a moment. That's a bluff. They have no grounds for a custody challenge. You're a fit parent, there's no evidence of danger or negligence. Catherine was trying to scare you. It worked. I know, that's the point. Richard wants you terrified enough to withdraw your support for Victoria. He wants you to think protecting your daughter means abandoning her. Don't fall for it. What if it's not a bluff? What if Sarah gets involved? What if they find some way to make me look unfit? Lucas, listen to me. Take a breath. You just survived 2 hours of hostile questioning without breaking, without contradicting yourself, without giving them anything they can actually use. You did exactly what you needed to do. The threats are just noise. Noise that involves my daughter. I understand, but walking away now won't protect Mia. It'll teach her that bullies win when they threaten what you love. Is that the lesson you want her to learn? Lucas leaned his head against the steering wheel. Everything Melissa said made sense logically, but logic didn't erase the visceral fear of someone targeting his child to get to him. What happens now? He asked. Now Victoria's divorce proceeds. Richard will retaliate. He's probably already started. There'll be media coverage, speculation, attempts to paint her as unstable and you as the catalyst. Your deposition transcript will be leaked to friendly journalists who will write our articles questioning your motives. It's going to get ugly. How ugly? Depends on how far Richard's willing to go. But Lucas, Victoria is fighting back. For the first time in 14 years, she's telling her story on her terms. That matters. What you did, showing up for her, giving her someone to trust, that gave her the courage to file. Don't let Richard's lawyers convince you that was wrong. Lucas closed his eyes. I need to pick up Mia from school. Go be with your daughter. Let her remind you why this matters. And Lucas, we're going to get through this. Both of you. I promise. They hung up. Lucas sat in the parking garage for another 5 minutes, pulling himself together, before driving to Mia's school. His daughter bounced out to the pickup line with her usual enthusiasm, chattering about a science project on volcanoes. Can we make one at home, Daddy? With baking soda and vinegar? Emma says hers exploded everywhere and her mom got mad, but I promise I'll be careful. Sure, sweetheart. We can do that this weekend. Yes, you're the best. Oh, and Mrs. Patterson wants to talk to you about the field trip permission slip. I forgot to give it to you. Normal problems. Permission slips and science projects and parent-teacher communication. The ordinary concerns of childhood that had nothing to do with depositions and custody threats and billionaire divorces. Lucas held on to that normalcy like a life raft. At home, Mia did homework while Lucas made dinner. Spaghetti, simple and comforting. They ate together at their small kitchen table, Mia telling him about her friend group drama with the earnest seriousness of someone for whom lunchroom politics was earth-shattering. And then Emma said she'd only share her cookies with Madison, not with me, so I said that's fine because I have my own cookies. But Daddy, I didn't have cookies, I was bluffing. Is that lying? It's negotiating. There's a difference. Oh, okay. I like negotiating better than lying. After dinner, Lucas's phone started buzzing with news alerts. The divorce filing was getting coverage now, headlines popping up across local and national outlets. He silenced his phone, not ready to see how the story was being told, not ready to see his name in print. But at 8:30 p.m., after Mia was in bed, he couldn't avoid it anymore. Lucas opened his laptop and searched for Victoria's name. The headlines were brutal. Tech billionaire Victoria Hale files for divorce, claims abuse. Richard Hale responds to false abuse. Abuse allegations in shocking divorce. Filing. Sources. Victoria Hale's mystery man identified as Phoenix marketing employee. That last one included Lucas's name, his age, his occupation. The article was careful with its wording, lots of alleged and sources say, but the implication was clear. Lonely single father inserts himself into billionaire marriage. Convinced vulnerable CEO to leave her successful husband. The comments section was worse. Lucas made the mistake of scrolling through, reading strangers dissect his motives, his character, his fitness as a parent. Half called him an opportunist, half called him an idiot. Several suggested he was having an affair and hiding behind abuse allegations to justify it. Not a single comment considered that maybe, possibly, he'd just helped someone who needed it. Lucas closed the laptop before he could read more. His phone rang, unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Different number. Then again. Reporters. They'd found his cell phone number somehow. Within an hour, 3 different news outlets had called asking for comment on his relationship with Victoria Hale. Lucas blocked each number, knowing more would follow. Around 10 p.m., David Chen called. I saw the news. You okay? Define okay. Fair. Listen, I did some digging on Richard Hale's legal team. Morrison, Chen, and Associates, no relation to me, unfortunately, has a reputation for scorched earth tactics in high-profile divorces. They've represented 3 other powerful men accused of coercive control in the past 5 years. All 3 cases settled quietly with NDAs and the women walking away with minimal assets. They intimidated the wives into silence. Exactly. Richard's playbook is predictable. Public relations campaign is painting the wife as unstable, pressure on her support system, financial manipulation to restrict her resources, and relentless legal action until she's too exhausted to fight. He's betting Victoria will fold like the others. She won't. You sound sure of that. I am. Victoria's done folding. That's why this is happening. David was quiet. Then, Lucas, I'm going to ask you something as your friend, not as a lawyer. Are you prepared for how bad this might get? For reporters at your door, your employer getting calls, Mia's school getting questions? For the possibility that Richard succeeds in painting you as the villain? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Why? And don't say because it's the right thing. I need to understand what's driving this, because from the outside it looks like professional suicide. Lucas thought about Victoria's face in the Blue Note lounge when she'd said she'd forgotten what wanting felt like. About her playing dragons with Mia, laughing for the first time in who knew how long. About the text she'd sent saying, I deserve to be free, like she was reminding herself it was true. Because she asked for help, Lucas said simply. And I have a daughter who's watching how I respond when someone asks for help. What I teach her now about courage and standing up for people, that's worth more than my reputation or my comfort. You're either the best man I know or the most stubborn. Everyone keeps saying that, because it's true. Look, I can't represent you officially, but I can give unofficial advice. Document everything. Every interaction with Richard's team, every media inquiry, every threat. If they come after custody, we need evidence they're retaliating rather than acting in Mia's best interest. They already threatened custody in the deposition. Of course they did. Empty threat, but they want you scared. Don't give them the satisfaction. After David hung up, Lucas checked on Mia one more time. She was sprawled across her bed, covers kicked off, stuffed triceratops clutched in one hand. Peaceful and unaware that her father's decision to help a stranger was about to make their quiet life very loud. Lucas pulled her covers back up, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "I'm sorry for what's coming, baby, but I promise it's for the right reasons." The next morning, Friday, Lucas woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from numbers he didn't recognize, reporters, probably, looking for quotes. But one was from his boss at the solar panel company. "Lucas, need you to come in early today. We should talk." Those 4 words, "we should talk," never meant anything good. Lucas dropped Mia at school, fielding questions from other parents who'd clearly seen the news and were trying to figure out if he was safe to be around their children. He gave tight smiles, deflected with vague responses, and got out of there as fast as possible. At work, his boss was waiting in the conference room. Tom Hendricks, 50-something, decent guy who'd hired Lucas when no one else would after the divorce. He looked uncomfortable. "Close the door," Tom said. Lucas sat. "I can explain." "Lucas, I don't need explanations. I need to understand if this situation affects your ability to do your job." "It doesn't. I'm still the same employee I was last week." "Are you? Because last week you weren't named in a billionaire divorce. Last week reporters weren't calling our office asking about your character. Last week we didn't have clients questioning whether they want to work with someone involved in this kind of scandal." "I haven't done anything wrong. I helped someone. That's all." "I believe you, but perception matters in business. And the perception right now is that you're embroiled in something messy. Our clients are conservative, Lucas. Solar panels to retirement communities and churches. They want stability, not drama." Lucas felt his throat tighten. "Are you firing me?" Tom rubbed his face. "I'm asking you to take a leave of absence, paid, through the end of the year. Let this blow over, let the news cycle move on, and then we'll reassess. That's firing me with extra steps. That's protecting the company while giving you time to deal with your situation. Lucas, I like you. You're a good employee. But I have a business to run and payroll to make. I can't have every client conversation become about whether our marketing guy is trustworthy." There was no point arguing. Tom had made up his mind, probably before Lucas even walked in. Companies didn't stand by employees caught in scandals. They cut losses and moved on. "Fine," Lucas said. "I'll clear out my desk. You have until Monday. And Lucas, for what it's worth, I hope it works out. Whatever you're doing, whoever you're helping, I hope it's worth it." Lucas nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and left the conference room. His coworkers avoided eye contact as he walked back to his cubicle. People he'd had lunch with, shared coffee with, traded stories about kids and weekend plans. Suddenly, they were strangers, unwilling to be associated with his toxicity. He packed his personal items into a cardboard box. 2 years of employment condensed into photos of Mia, a coffee mug that said "World's OK-S Dad," and a succulent plant that had somehow survived his neglect. By 10 a.m., Lucas was unemployed. He sat in his car in the parking lot, staring at the box of his professional life, and called Melissa Torres. "They fired me," he said when she answered. "Well, leave of absence, but it's the same thing." "I'm sorry, that's retaliation for your deposition testimony. We can fight it." "With what money? I just lost my income." "Lucas, I need to go. I need to figure out how to pay rent and keep Mia's life stable while my reputation gets destroyed by a billionaire with unlimited resources. I need to—" His voice cracked. "I need to think." He hung up before Melissa could respond. Sat in the parking lot watching people go about their normal Friday mornings, coffee runs and meetings and casual conversations, while his own world disintegrated around him. His phone buzzed. Victoria. "I heard about your job. I'm so sorry. This is my fault." "It's Richard's fault." "Same thing." "Lucas, let me help. Financially, I mean. I can cover your expenses while you look for new employment. I have access to—" "No." The word came out sharper than he intended. "I'm not taking money from you. That's exactly what Richard wants. Proof that I'm in this for financial gain." "But you're suffering because of me. Because you helped me. I can't just—" "Yes, you can. You can fight your divorce, build your case, and prove that asking for help wasn't a mistake. That's how you help me, by winning." Victoria was crying now, quiet tears he could hear in her breathing. I never wanted this. Never wanted you to lose everything because of me. I haven't lost everything. I lost a job. I still have Mia. I still know who I am and why I made the choices I made. Richard can't take that. He's gonna try. Let him try. They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Lucas drove home to his apartment, the box of belongings on the passenger seat, and tried to figure out what came next. He had savings, maybe 3 months' worth if he was careful. After that, things got complicated. He'd need to find new employment, probably in a different industry where his name hadn't been plastered across news articles as a homewrecker. He'd need to explain to Mia why Daddy wasn't going to work anymore. He'd need to survive Richard Hale's continued campaign to destroy anyone who supported Victoria. Lucas set the box on his kitchen counter and started searching for jobs online, knowing most wouldn't call back once they Googled his name. His phone kept buzzing with reporters, with blocked numbers, with people wanting his story. Around 2 p.m., a knock on his door. Lucas checked the peephole. A woman in professional clothes with a camera crew behind her. News team. They'd found his address. He didn't answer. Waited for them to leave. They knocked 3 more times, left a business card under the door, and finally departed. Lucas checked the card. Phoenix ABC affiliate. Investigative reporter wanting an exclusive interview. He threw it in the trash. At 3:15 p.m., Lucas picked up Mia from school. She climbed into the car full of her usual energy. Guess what, Daddy? We're learning about the water cycle, and it's so cool. Did you know water goes up into the sky and becomes clouds and then comes back down as rain? It's like magic, but it's science. That's amazing, sweetheart. Yeah. Oh, and Mrs. Patterson said you never responded about the field trip. Lucas had completely forgotten. I'll take care of it tonight. They drove home, Mia chattering about evaporation and condensation, blissfully unaware that her father's life was falling apart around them. At the apartment, Lucas helped her with homework while fielding more calls from unknown numbers that he let go to voicemail. At dinner, mac and cheese, Mia's favorite, his daughter finally noticed something was off. Daddy, why aren't you going to work? Lucas's heart sank. He'd planned to ease into this conversation, find the right words. But Mia was perceptive, had probably noticed him home in the middle of the day. I'm taking some time off, just for a little while. Why? How did you explain billionaire power games and retaliation to a 7-year-old? Because sometimes grown-ups need a break, like summer vacation from school, but for work. Oh, will you get bored? Probably a little, but I'll spend more time with you. We can do that volcano project. Mia's face lit up. Really? This weekend? This weekend. After Mia went to bed, Lucas finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of everything, sat on his couch in the dark, head in his hands, and let the fear wash over him. Fear for Mia's future, for his ability to provide, for what would happen if Richard's campaign against him succeeded. Fear that helping Victoria would ultimately cost him his daughter, his stability, everything he'd rebuilt from the wreckage of his divorce. His phone buzzed one more time. Text from an unknown number. This could all stop. Walk away from Victoria Hale, issue a statement that you were mistaken about the nature of your relationship, and your job comes back. Your reputation gets restored. Your daughter's life returns to normal. 24 hours to decide. Morrison, Chen, and Associates. There it was, the offer, the exit ramp Richard was providing. Walk away, and everything goes back to the way it was. Keep supporting Victoria, and lose everything that mattered. Lucas stared at the message for a long time. Thought about Mia, about stability, about the easy path that would protect his small, safe world. Then he thought about Victoria's eyes when she'd said she deserved to be free, about her courage in filing despite knowing Richard would retaliate, about the kind of man he wanted to be for his daughter. He deleted the message without responding. Tomorrow would bring more consequences, more retaliation, more pressure to abandon Victoria and save himself. But tonight, Lucas Reed chose courage over fear, and somehow, despite everything, that felt like enough. The weekend passed in strange suspension. Saturday and Sunday blurring together in a haze of job applications and volcano building with Mia and ignoring the reporters who occasionally appeared at his door. Lucas had stopped checking the news, stopped reading articles about himself and Victoria, stopped engaging with the narrative Richard's team was crafting. What mattered was the truth, and the truth didn't change based on how many strangers misunderstood it. On Monday morning, Lucas woke to find his story had taken an unexpected turn. His phone was flooded with notifications, but these were different. Supportive messages from people he'd never met, sharing their own experiences with coercive control and abusive relationships. Someone had leaked the full transcript of his deposition, and reading his calm responses to Catherine Walsh's aggressive questioning had apparently shifted public perception. One comment stuck with him. "This is what it looks like when someone helps without expecting anything in return. We need more Lucas Reeds in the world." He wasn't sure about that, but it felt better than being called an opportunist. Melissa Torres called at 8 a.m., her voice energized in a way Lucas hadn't heard before. "Have you seen the news?" I stopped watching. "We'll start again." 3 women came forward over the weekend, former employees of Richard's investment firm. They're corroborating Victoria's claims about his controlling behavior, his need to dominate every situation, his pattern of isolating and manipulating people who work for him. It's not enough to prove spousal abuse directly, but it establishes a pattern of behavior that supports Victoria's testimony. Lucas felt something loosen in his chest. Victoria must be relieved. She's cautiously optimistic. But Lucas, there's more. One of the women who came forward, she's a journalist. Major publication. She's writing a long-form piece about coercive control in high-net-worth marriages, using Victoria's case as the centerpiece. She wants to interview you. I don't want to be in the media. I know, but this isn't tabloid coverage. This is legitimate journalism that could change the narrative entirely. Right now, you're the mystery man who may or may not be having an affair. An interview could make you the witness who saw abuse and chose to help. That distinction matters. Lucas thought about it. About Mia reading articles someday when she was older, trying to understand why her father had gotten involved in something that cost him his job and his privacy. Better she read the truth than speculation. Okay, set it up. The interview happened 2 days later at a coffee shop in downtown Phoenix, chosen because it was public enough to be safe, but quiet enough for conversation. The journalist's name was Rebecca Park, mid-40s with intelligent eyes and the kind of presence that suggested she'd heard every story and wouldn't be shocked by his. They talked for 2 hours. Lucas told her everything: the gala, Victoria's whispered plea, the jazz club and the park, and Richard's ice-cold threats. Rebecca asked tough questions, pushed back on his motivations, forced him to examine his own choices. But she listened, really listened, in a way that made Lucas feel heard rather than interrogated. "Why did you keep helping her?" Rebecca asked near the end. "After the threats, after losing your job, after it became clear this would cost you everything. Why not walk away?" Lucas thought about Mia, about teaching his daughter through actions rather than words what courage looked like. Because someone needed help, and I was able to give it. That's supposed to be enough reason, isn't it? We're supposed to help each other. Not because we'll get something out of it, not because it's convenient, but because it's right. And if we only help people when it's easy or safe, then we're not really helping. We're just performing kindness. Rebecca made notes, her expression thoughtful. "Richard Hale's lawyers claim you're an opportunist who saw a vulnerable, wealthy woman and inserted yourself for financial gain. How do you respond to that?" "I respond by saying I'm currently unemployed, fielding custody threats, and my name has been dragged through every news outlet in Arizona. If I was looking for financial gain, I'm spectacularly bad at it." She smiled. "Fair point. Last question. Do you regret getting involved?" Lucas didn't hesitate. "No. Not for a second. I regret that helping someone became controversial. I regret that Victoria had to suffer for 14 years before finding the courage to leave. I regret that we live in a world where wealth and power can disguise abuse so completely that people don't believe victims when they finally speak up. But getting involved, helping her, that's the one thing I'm certain I got right." The article published a week later under the headline, "The Witness: How One Man's Decision to Help Expose the Hidden Abuse in a Billion-Dollar Marriage." It was fair, balanced, and devastating in its examination of how coercive control operated in relationships where the victim appeared to have everything. Rebecca had interviewed Victoria, Richard's former employees, experts on domestic abuse, and legal scholars on the challenges of proving non-physical abuse in court. Lucas came across as exactly what he was, an ordinary person who'd made an extraordinary choice to stand up for someone who needed it. The response was overwhelming. Within 24 hours, Lucas received job offers from 3 different companies who'd read the article and wanted to hire someone with demonstrated character and moral courage. His LinkedIn profile, which he'd barely updated in years, was flooded with connection requests and messages of support. But more importantly, the article shifted the conversation around Victoria's divorce. Suddenly, media coverage focused less on the affair allegations and more on the patterns of control Rebecca had documented. Richard's team went on the defensive, issuing statements about how he was the real victim of a smear campaign orchestrated by his ungrateful wife and her supporters. The more Richard protested, the guiltier he looked. Victoria called Lucas the night the article published, her voice thick with emotion. "You didn't have to do that interview. You could have stayed silent, let this all blow over quietly. But you stood up in public and told the truth, even knowing it would keep you in the spotlight. Why? Because the truth matters. And because you deserve to have someone tell your story honestly instead of letting Richard control the narrative. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to thank me. Just keep fighting, keep building your case, keep moving forward." "I am." Melissa filed motions this week to freeze Richard's access to certain accounts, to prevent him from liquidating assets before the settlement. We're also deposing his personal assistant, his lawyer, his business partner, everyone who might have witnessed his controlling behavior. It's slow, but we're making progress. "How are you holding up?" Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Some days are harder than others. I stepped down temporarily as CEO of Hale Innovations. Couldn't run the company while fighting Richard for control of my own life. The board wasn't happy, but they understood. My CFO is handling day-to-day operations while I focus on the divorce. It's strange not working, not having that identity to hide behind. But it's also freeing. For the first time in 14 years, my schedule is my own. I wake up when I want, eat what I want, see who I want. Small freedoms, but they feel massive. They are massive. I'm also in therapy. Real therapy. Not the marriage counseling Richard arranged where the therapist was clearly on his payroll. Someone Melissa recommended who specializes in trauma from coercive relationships. It's helping, slowly. Good. You deserve that support. So do you. Have you talked to anyone? About the job loss, the stress, everything you've been through? Lucas hadn't, actually. Had been so focused on keeping Mia's life stable and surviving Richard's attacks that he hadn't considered his own mental health. I probably should. Melissa's therapist has a colleague who works with people who've been caught in other people's domestic situations. Witnesses, family members, friends. I can send you the contact info if you want. Yeah, that would be good. They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Lucas added the therapist to his growing list of things to handle, sandwiched between accept job offer and explain to Mia why reporters keep calling. Speaking of Mia, his daughter had handled everything with the resilience of childhood. She knew Daddy had helped a friend, and some people were mad about it, but she also knew her father was a good person because he made her breakfast every morning and helped with homework and built volcanoes that actually exploded with baking soda and vinegar. In Mia's world, those things mattered more than newspaper articles. "Is your friend okay?" Mia asked one evening while they colored together at the kitchen table. "The sad lady from the park?" "She's getting better. She's leaving the person who made her sad." "Good. Nobody should stay with people who make them sad." Out of the mouths of children, Lucas kissed the top of her head. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart." November turned into December. The Arizona winter was mild, all sunshine and cool evenings perfect for parks and outdoor activities. Lucas accepted a job offer from a sustainability consulting firm that had been impressed by his integrity in crisis. Better pay than his old job, better benefits, and a boss who explicitly said she valued employees who did the right thing even when it was difficult. Victoria's divorce proceedings continued. Depositions were taken, evidence was gathered, and slowly, methodically, Melissa Torres built a case that was impossible to ignore. Richard had tracked Victoria's car without her knowledge, had installed monitoring software on her phone and computer. had maintained control over every bank account despite both their names being on the paperwork, had systematically isolated her from friends and family who might question his authority. The evidence was damning, and Richard knew it. In February, nearly 4 months after Victoria first filed for divorce, Richard's legal team approached Melissa with a settlement offer. The terms were surprisingly generous. Victoria would retain full ownership of Hale Innovations and the majority of their shared assets. Richard would receive a financial payout and agree to a mutual non-disparagement clause. Most importantly, he would agree to a restraining order preventing him from contacting Victoria or coming within 500 feet of her. It was surrender dressed up as negotiation. Melissa called Lucas the day the settlement was finalized. "It's over. Victoria signed the papers this morning. She's officially free." Lucas felt relief wash over him so intensely he had to sit down. "How is she?" "Crying. Happy tears, mostly. She wants to see you, actually. Asked if you'd meet her tomorrow evening. Said there's something she wants to say in person." They agreed to meet at the Blue Note Lounge, the jazz club where this had all started. Lucas arrived first, settling into the same corner booth where he'd sat with Victoria that first night when she'd been a stranger asking for help. The piano player was different, but the music was the same, slow, soulful, creating space between notes for contemplation. Victoria walked in 15 minutes later, and Lucas almost didn't recognize her. She wore jeans, the same stiff Target ones from the park, now properly broken in, and a simple sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of styled into submission. She looked younger, lighter, like someone who'd set down a weight she'd been carrying for years. "Hi," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Hi. How does freedom feel?" "Terrifying. Amazing," both at the same time. She ordered whiskey from Marcus, who greeted her like an old friend. "I keep waiting for Richard to call to demand I explain my schedule or approve my meetings. Then I remember he can't anymore. That part of my life is done." "What happens now with the company?" "I'm going back as CEO next month. The board voted unanimously to reinstate me once the divorce was final. They saw what Richard tried to do, how he used my company as leverage against me, and they didn't like it. Turns out loyalty to the person who actually built the empire beats loyalty to the person who married into it. That's good. The company needs you. Maybe. But more importantly, I need the company. Need to prove to myself I can run it on my own terms, make decisions without second-guessing whether Richard would approve. It's going to be different this time. Better." They talked for an hour, catching up on the weeks they'd been too busy surviving to connect. Victoria told him about therapy, about rediscovering friendships Richard had discouraged, about the simple pleasure of eating dinner at 9 p.m. because she felt like it, rather than because it was scheduled. Lucas told her about his new job, about Mia's latest dinosaur obsession, now specifically focused on marine reptiles, and about the strange experience of being recognized in public as that guy who helped the billionaire. Eventually, the conversation settled into comfortable silence. The piano player transitioned into something bluesy and contemplative. Victoria traced patterns on the table with one finger, gathering her thoughts. "I need to tell you something," she finally said. "Something I've been trying to find the words for since this started." Lucas waited. "You saved my life. Not metaphorically, literally. If you hadn't asked if I was okay that night, if you hadn't taken me seriously when I asked for help, if you hadn't stood by me when Richard tried to destroy you for supporting me, I would still be trapped. I would have convinced myself that was my life, that I deserved it somehow, that leaving was impossible. You showed me it wasn't impossible, that someone believed me, believed in me. Enough to risk everything. That gave me the courage to believe in myself. Victoria, let me finish. You lost your job because of me. You were threatened, harassed, dragged through the media. Your daughter's life was disrupted. You had every reason to walk away and you didn't. You stayed when staying was the hardest thing you could do. And I need you to know that I see that. I understand what it cost you, and I'm grateful beyond words." Lucas felt his throat tighten. "I didn't do it for gratitude." "I know. That's what made it real. That's what made me trust you when I couldn't trust anyone else." She reached across the table, took his hand. "You're a good man, Lucas Reed. Your daughter is lucky to have you. And I'm lucky you were at that gala when I needed someone most." I'm lucky too. You reminded me that I'm more than just a single dad surviving paycheck to paycheck, that I'm capable of standing up for something that matters, even when it's terrifying. That's a gift. Victoria smiled and it transformed her face, pure joy, without calculation or performance. So what do we do now? Now that the crisis is over and we're both free to live our lives? Lucas thought about that. They'd been bound together by trauma and danger, by fighting a common enemy. What happened when the enemy was defeated and they were just two people sitting in a jazz club on a Tuesday night? I think we figure out who we are outside of survival mode, Lucas said. We build lives we actually want instead of lives we're running from. And maybe if we're both interested, we get to know each other as people rather than allies in a war. I'd like that. Getting to know you properly, without lawyers and depositions and existential crises. Same. Though I should warn you, my life is pretty boring. Parent-teacher conferences and grocery shopping and falling asleep during kids' movies. Not exactly billionaire lifestyle. That sounds perfect. I've had enough excitement for one lifetime. They finished their drinks, paid Marcus, and walked out into the cool February night. The parking lot was nearly empty, their cars the only ones remaining. Victoria stopped beside her new car, a modest sedan she'd bought herself, choosing it based on safety ratings rather than status, and turned to Lucas. Can I ask you something? Anything. Would you like to have dinner with me? Not as the person I'm grateful to, not as my witness or supporter or any of those roles, just as Lucas. A man I'd like to know better, a friend I'd like to become something more with, if you're open to that. Lucas's heart did something complicated in his chest. He thought about Victoria playing dragons with Mia, about her laugh in the Blue Note, about her courage in choosing freedom over comfort. Thought about building something real with someone who understood struggle and resilience and the cost of choosing yourself. Yeah, he said. I'd like that a lot. Good. How about Saturday? I'll pick you up at 7, somewhere nice but not stuffy, somewhere we can just be normal people on a date. Mia has a sleepover Saturday night. Perfect timing. Victoria smiled. It's a date then. She kissed his cheek, warm and brief and full of promise, then got in her car and drove away. Lucas stood in the parking lot watching her taillights disappear, feeling like he'd just stepped off a roller coaster and onto solid ground. The ride had been terrifying, had cost him more than he'd expected, but standing here now, watching a woman he'd helped reclaim her freedom, drive off into her chosen future, he couldn't regret a single choice. The months that followed were quieter, gentler. Lucas and Victoria dated carefully, building something real from the foundation of trust they'd established during crisis. They went to museums and hiking trails and hole-in-the-wall restaurants. They talked about books and childhood and their complicated relationships with ambition. They introduced their lives slowly, Victoria meeting Mia properly. Not as the sad park lady, but as Daddy's friend Victoria, who ran a big company and asked Mia very serious questions about dinosaur biology. Mia approved. She's nice, and she listens when I talk, not like some grown-ups who just pretend. Can she come to my science fair? If she's free, sweetheart. Victoria came to the science fair, stood next to Lucas admiring Mia's volcano project, improved from their weekend version with actual geological accuracy, and blended seamlessly into the crowd of parents. Nobody recognized her as the billionaire CEO who dominated headlines 6 months ago. She was just another adult supporting a child's achievement. That evening, after Mia was asleep, Victoria and Lucas sat on his apartment balcony drinking wine and watching Phoenix lights spread toward the mountains. I've been thinking about something, Victoria said, about what comes next for me professionally. Having second thoughts about going back to Hale Innovations? No, I love the company, but I want to do something more with the platform I have. I'm starting a foundation focused on supporting people leaving abusive relationships, especially ones involving financial control. Legal support, temporary housing, job placement, therapy. All the resources I had access to because I'm wealthy, but available to people who aren't. Lucas turned to look at her. That's amazing. It feels right. Like taking what happened to me and transforming it into something that helps others. I was thinking, would you want to be involved? Not as an employee, she added quickly, as an advisor. You understand what it's like to support someone leaving an abusive situation, what witnesses and friends need to feel equipped to help without destroying their own lives. I'd be honored. Good. Because I'm going to need people around me who understand that power isn't about control, that real strength is supporting others rather than dominating them. You taught me that. You already knew it. You just forgot for a while. Maybe. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Thank you. For everything. For that first night when you asked if I was okay. For every choice you made after that. For being exactly the right person at exactly the right time. Thank you for trusting me. For being brave enough to leave. For showing Mia what real courage looks like. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe and pulse below them. Somewhere out there, Richard Hale was living his own life, diminished but not destroyed, bound by restraining orders and public knowledge of his behavior. Somewhere out there, other people were trapped in relationships they couldn't see their way out of, waiting for someone to notice their distress and take it seriously. Lucas couldn't help all of them, but he'd helped one. And Victoria was helping more through her foundation. And maybe that was enough, not saving everyone, but saving someone, and then using that experience to create ripples of change that spread further than you could see. 6 months later, on a warm August evening, Lucas and Victoria took Mia to a community art event at a park in Tempe. Local artists displayed work, musicians performed on a small stage, food trucks offered everything from tacos to Thai food. It was busy and loud and chaotic in the best way, life happening in public, joy being shared. Mia dragged them to a booth where an artist was painting dinosaurs on children's faces. Victoria paid for the most elaborate Parasaurolophus design available, watching with amusement as Mia transformed into her favorite prehistoric creature. She's going to want to sleep in that, Lucas warned. Let her. Life's too short to always be practical. They walked through the park as the sun set, Mia running ahead to look at sculptures and paintings, Lucas and Victoria following at a relaxed pace. They'd been dating for 8 months now, taking it slow, building something that felt solid and real. Victoria had her company back, stronger than before, her foundation launching next month. Lucas had his new job, his stable life, his daughter who was thriving. Everything was ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Victoria stopped walking, turned to face Lucas with an expression he couldn't quite read. I need to ask you something. Okay. These past months with you have been the happiest I've ever been. Not because you rescued me, I'm past thinking I needed rescuing, but because you see me, the real me, not the CEO or the billionaire or the abuse survivor, just Victoria, the woman who burns dinner and cries during Pixar movies and is still figuring out who she wants to be now that she's free to choose. Lucas smiled. I like that, Victoria. She's pretty great. I like the Lucas who builds volcanoes with his daughter and falls asleep during kids' movies and chose courage over safety even when it cost him everything. I like him a lot. She took his hands. I'm not asking you to marry me. We're not there yet, and maybe we never will be. But I'm asking if you want to build a life together, really together. Not my world or your world, but something we create from scratch. Something that's ours. Lucas looked at this woman who'd asked him to take her somewhere private 8 months ago, who'd trusted him with her darkest fears, who'd fought her way to freedom and was now standing in a park offering him a future. He thought about Mia, about whether introducing more change into her life was fair, about whether he was ready to combine his small, safe world with Victoria's much larger, more complicated one. Then he thought about Mia's face when Victoria listened to her dinosaur lectures with genuine interest, about Victoria's laugh when they watched movies together, about how natural it felt to have her in his life. How right it seemed when she was around. Yeah, Lucas said. Let's build something together. Victoria kissed him, right there in the park with Mia watching from the sculpture garden and strangers walking past and the sun setting over the Phoenix skyline. It wasn't their first kiss, but it felt like a beginning anyway. The start of something chosen rather than survived, built rather than escaped from. When they pulled apart, Mia was running back toward them, face paint slightly smeared, but grin enormous. Can we get ice cream, please? Victoria, don't you think we deserve ice cream? Absolutely. I think ice cream is mandatory after art events. See, Daddy? Victoria gets it. They walked to the ice cream truck together, Lucas in the middle with Mia on one side and Victoria on the other, and Lucas felt something settle in his chest that had been restless for years. This was it. This was what he'd been moving towards since that night at the gala. Not romance specifically, but connection. The knowledge that helping someone could lead to being helped in return. That courage could create community. That choosing to show up for another person could change both your lives in ways you couldn't predict. He'd lost a job, gained national attention he never wanted, survived threats and legal battles and media scrutiny. He'd risked his stability, his reputation, his carefully constructed single-parent life. And he'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Because standing in line for ice cream with his daughter and the woman he was falling in love with, watching the sky turn purple and gold as the sun disappeared, Lucas understood what mattered. Not the big dramatic gestures or the headline-making choices, but the small daily decisions to show up, to help, to choose connection over isolation and courage over fear. Victoria ordered mint chocolate chip. Mia got cookie dough with extra sprinkles. Lucas chose vanilla because he was boring and didn't care. They sat on a park bench eating ice cream as the first stars appeared, talking about nothing important, laughing at Mia's jokes, existing in the simple present moment without worry about what came next. And for the first time since his divorce, since becoming a single father, since his life had been reduced to survival mode, Lucas Reed felt genuinely, completely happy. Not because everything was perfect, not because all his problems were solved, but because he'd chosen to help someone when they needed it, and that choice had led him here, to a park bench with his daughter and a woman who understood that freedom was something you fought for, not something you were given. The future would bring its own challenges. Combining their lives wouldn't be simple. There would be complications with Mia, with Victoria's company, with navigating the difference between Lucas's modest means and Victoria's wealth. There would be days when it felt too hard, too complicated, too much. But there would also be this: ice cream at sunset, Mia's laughter, Victoria's hand in his, the knowledge that they'd both survived their own versions of hell and come out the other side ready to build something beautiful. And that, Lucas thought, was worth everything it had cost. "What are you thinking about?" Victoria asked, noticing his expression. "That I'm glad you asked me to take you somewhere private. Best decision I ever made." "Second best," Lucas corrected. "Best decision was choosing to leave." Victoria considered that. "You're right. Asking for help was important, but deciding I deserved better, that was everything." "You did deserve better. You still do. So do you." Mia, oblivious to the weight of their conversation, finished her ice cream and announced, "This was the best day ever. Can we do it again next weekend?" Lucas looked at Victoria, who smiled and nodded. "Yeah, sweetheart. We can do this every weekend if you want." "Perfect. I'm going to tell Emma at school that I have the best daddy and the best daddy's friend in the whole world. I'm just Victoria, honey. You can call me Victoria. Okay? I'm going to tell Emma I have the best daddy and the best Victoria in the whole world." They walked back to the car as the park lights came on, Mia skipping ahead, Lucas and Victoria following with their hands linked. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and joys. Next week, next month, next year, all of it unknown, all of it waiting to be written. But tonight, they had this. And this was enough. More than enough. This was everything.